5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, Dr. Soh.
Hi.
What's happening? Pull this sucker about a
good.
fist from your face. There you
Is
go.
that good?
Yeah, perfect.
All right.
Thanks for doing this. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
I've watched a bunch of your videos. I've listened to a bunch of your talks, read a bunch of your work. Very interesting person.
Thank
and this
you.
is a good time for a person like you. Things seem to be kind of scrambled.
A little bit, yeah.
It's a little topsy-turvy out there these days.
Yeah, a little bit crazy.
So you're a sex neuroscientist? Is that an accurate description?
Yeah, I'm a former academic sex researcher. My PhD is in sexual neuroscience research, and now I work as a science journalist and a columnist.
And why former?
Because the climate in academia has changed so much. Like you mentioned how things are topsy-turvy, but that's pretty much how you can describe academia nowadays, even in the hard sciences.
Yeah, it's getting a little weird. What do you attribute it to?
I think it's a combination of things. I think it's particular ideologies coming in and taking over, but they've been there for a while, but I think it's that they've reached the mainstream. I see it as political correctness running amok, and I see it as legitimate researchers not being able to speak out because they've got enough on their plate with their research, their teaching, they've got their students, they're super busy. And then on top of it, they don't want to deal with the mobbing that will inevitably happen if they do speak out. So things are kind of in favor right now of the craziness.
But it's fascinating, though, as an outsider, to watch the craziness.
I bet.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to be in school right now and deal with it, but to watch it from the outside, it's just so interesting.
Interesting in what way, though?
Well, because it's almost like there's sort of a delusional aspect to it, like an agreed upon delusional aspect. Mm-hmm. It's like the gender one in particular. The gender is very strange right now.
Yeah.
Like there's first of all the LBGTQIA. What else?
Et cetera.
Is there?
Oh my God!
Are there more?
There are tons. Yeah.
They're
more.
adding more to it.
They keep adding more. Yeah, to be more inclusive.
You okay, Jamie? Yeah. Something going on?
The focus is fucked up.
Oh, what's going on?
It's all right. I got it.
All right. I thought maybe we were down again. Yeah, it's just, but gender in particular, one of the things that I said about one of the more bizarre things about today's political climate is that people selectively agree with science. Mm-hmm. It's like when it comes to climate change, like everybody is like pro-science, like science all the way. Mm-hmm. Look at the studies. Yeah. Even when they don't even understand the studies, like there's a famous, and you get in trouble when you bring up Tucker Carlson because
mm-hmm.
people go, "Oh, you're a Tucker Carlson fan." I'm just, as a human being,
I'm not going to get mad.
He made some very good points with Bill Nye. He had Bill Nye on. They were talking about science, and he said, "Okay, if human beings are responsible for climate change, what percentage? What are the numbers?" Like, and Bill Nye really isn't a scientist. He's a science, what would you call
personality? There's a media personality.
He's a guy who's, he's a promoter of science, but not really necessarily a scientist. So he doesn't have long-term study and research to climate change. He's just sort of on there in a slightly arrogant way, saying things that I agree with. Mm-hmm. Like what I agree with is that human beings are responsible, at least in part, with climate change. Mm-hmm. This is what all the research points to.
Yeah.
But when Tucker Carlson was pressing him on it, he really didn't have any answers for it. So it's one of those things where like people on the left will blindly support science in one way. Is that you or me, dang it? If it's me, I'm going to be very upset with myself.
Don't think it's me.
I'm a loser. But then when it comes to gender, you watch his show. He's got this wacky show on Netflix where they're singing songs about gender can be fluid and gender can be this. And
there's more than two.
Yeah, there's more than two genders, which he didn't used to say.
Yeah.
If you go back to one of his old...
I did see that. There was an older episode where they clearly say that gender is binary.
Yeah, this is like way back before all this nuttiness stuff. Yeah. So it's influencing people who are people are deciding instead of supporting science and supporting the research on actual human beings as a biological organism. Mm-hmm. Instead, we're going with this bizarre politically correct climate, which inclines people to this weird delusional thinking. And as an outsider, that's what's interesting to me, to watch all this. Like, look at this scrambling. Look at this weirdness. You know?
It's hypocritical. It definitely is. And it's interesting to see. I mean, say the March for Science, I attended that, not this past year, but the year before. So people are there. They're super excited about science, pro-science. I think science is great.
Sure.
All this money should go to science. And you ask them, okay, so you're down for climate change being real, but what about Science Now by the left? And I asked so many people this while I was there because I was reporting on it for Playboy.com. And it's amazing. People get very uncomfortable. They don't want to say anything about. I would consider myself to be a liberal, but definitely liberals don't want to think about themselves being science deniers. And when you look at how people talk about gender now and biological sex differences in the brain, even biology more generally, people get very defensive. They get angry almost, and they find it threatening for some reason, which I don't understand. And that's a big part of my work, is to say I think we can acknowledge that these facts exist and that biological science is legitimate. That doesn't mean that sexism is okay. We're not saying that women are inferior or anything like that.
Exactly. That's the big point about all this, right? Is that we're not saying that anyone's inferior. We're just not the same thing. Mm-hmm. This is what the big problem is, to try to say, I certainly think we should all have equal rights, but we're not equal in terms of what we are. And it's not that we're not equal, like one's better. Mm-hmm. It's just like saying a wolf is not equal to a cheetah. They're fucking different things.
Yeah.
And males and females are different things.
Yeah.
And this is clear when you study us as an organism. You know, I had a really bizarre conversation once with a guy who's a professor or a former professor, and he was trying to deny that there's a difference between men and women.
It's crazy.
And one of the things I said, okay, you get a dog. Do you ask, is this a boy dog or a girl dog? And then he got like real weird.
Yeah.
There's really no answer to that.
Yeah.
Like it's a fucking boy dog. You want a boy dog, right? Is it a non-binary dog? Like, what is your dog?
Or it might change its mind tomorrow, right?
Is your dog gender fluid?
Yeah.
Like, what is gender fluid?
Well, it's this idea that you can be one gender one day, another gender the other day, or it might cycle through the day, or maybe you're a mix of both.
That seems like if it was anything else, you would have to be fucking crazy. Right? It was anything else.
Yeah.
If you decided, well, today I'm African.
Yeah.
Well, tomorrow I'm Chinese.
Yeah.
You know, today I'm tall. Tomorrow I'm short. Today I'm a pixie. Tomorrow I'm a wood elf.
But I think everybody is, we don't have to call it something like gender fluid. Everyone is a mix of male and female, right? Like
Sure.
You have people that are maybe more typically masculine or more typically feminine, but even still, I don't think there are many people that are 100% one way or the other.
No, well, what does that even mean? I mean, people are clearly more masculine than other people, but does that mean that the people like, let's pick a person, Bill Nye, does that mean he's not a man? He's clearly a man.
Exactly, yeah.
He's clearly a man. He's not a LeBron James, but he's a man.
Yeah.
There's obviously a spectrum.
Yeah.
But
I almost feel like that way of thinking is more old-fashioned because this is all about being progressive and open-minded. But I think if someone is a man but is maybe more female-typical, to say that this person is a different category of gender or that they're, I don't know, not male, to me that's more stereotypical. You know what I mean? I think it's not progressive to say if you're a mix of both, you must be something different.
Well, you're not necessarily a mix of both, right? You just have a different hormonal profile and a different... It's different body type, different. I mean, people vary so much that, I think having some sort of categories to say, oh, this is a male and this is a female, it seems like it's pretty beneficial.
Yeah.
I mean, although we vary so widely inside those categories, to pretend that those categories don't exist just seems so weird. We would never do that with any other organism.
Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of work, too. You see these companies going and they're trying to be more with the times, I guess. And everything is gender neutral now. And I'm thinking all of that money and time is being wasted when I don't think that does anything for women or sexism. If you change, instead of addressing someone by ladies and gentlemen, you say people, is that really going to stop sexism? It just makes people mad because then they have to change the way they talk.
I put up a story on Twitter the other day about people that are raising their kids with they and them.
I saw that, yeah.
They're calling them babies instead of babies.
Fun times.
What the fuck is that?
I think it's coming from, for some parents, it's coming from a good place. Like they obviously want the best for their kids and they don't want to limit the kid in terms of what they might be interested in. And I think because the media is telling them, if you let girls play with dolls, that's terrible and they're going to end up, not having any sort of prospects when they grow up in terms of their jobs or I don't know, it's such a terrible thing to be female typical nowadays. But I mean, like you mentioned, it's biology that's going to dictate what your kids play with. And then in other cases, I think it's parents that want to be special.
Well, it's also weird because if your son is trans, it's totally fine for him to be female typical.
Yeah.
Like it's celebrated. Like
Yeah.
if you have a trans son and he likes wearing lipstick and short skirts and prancing around, then he's fabulous. Like
Yeah.
there was a boy in New York, and there was this whole thing about he's the youngest ever drag queen.
Yeah, I
and,
saw that.
and everybody's going crazy, and people were angry about it. You know,
He's being
some-
exploited.
Yeah, some people were angry and saying he's being exploited by his parents, and some people thought it was wonderful that this kid was so expressive when he's so young. And then other people had a good point. They said, well, it's very sexualized. Like, how is this any different than someone who's in a beauty pageant, like a
Yeah.
John Benet Ramsey type situation?
Well, if
when
it
you're
was
really young.
if it was a little girl, people would be up in arms saying
Yeah.
that it's sexist and that it's the patriarchy. But that little boy, so I don't know that he's trans. I believe that he just likes to like a man who's a drag queen is just a man. It's usually a gay man who likes to
Right.
dress, you know, like an extreme form of femininity. I love drag queens, but I think that little boy is likely going to grow up to be a gay boy. If you have a little boy who says he's a girl, and you see a lot of these trans girls, if they were left alone and they didn't transition, they would likely, research shows they would grow up to be gay men.
Is that, I mean, I'm 100% for freedom, right? So I'm 100% for you being able to do whatever you want to do. The real question becomes when people are trans and young, it's how much of this is going to pass, and how much of this are you going to stop from ever passing because you're going to inject your body full with hormones? Like, are you giving yourself the opportunity just to decide to become a gay man versus become a woman? And would you be happier either or?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's very, very tricky.
But you can't even have that conversation now, because
Right,
that's
you
considered
can't.
transphobic.
Right.
What it is homophobic, though, that you can't consider that some of these kids just might be gay children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the gender fluid one, I was reading this article about this guy who varies by the day. Like in the day, like he'll
Yeah.
have periods of stress, so he'll switch over to a woman. There was actually a Radio Lab podcast
Okay.
where they interviewed a person that has the same issue. And the person was clearly abnormal in the way they communicated and the way they thought. It wasn't like you were dealing with some guy that you would trust with your taxes. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
like the dude was wacky, and then now he's a chick, and now he's back to being a guy again.
Okay.
And it
So he
was
actually transitioned,
in mid-conversation.
like physically?
No, I don't know. I didn't see it because
Okay.
you're just listening.
Okay.
But he's like, well, now I'm Peter again.
Oh, I see what you mean.
now I'm Wendy.
Okay.
You know, like what the fuck?
Hi, Wendy.
Well, I don't know how much of that is indulgent. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I don't want
Yeah.
to say I know how you feel, but I do want to say, hey, are you fucking crazy? Is this are we just indulging crazy
Yeah,
people?
pathology.
And right, I do believe there are people that are trans. I absolutely believe
I do
that
as
there
well,
are,
yeah.
that there are women that really are wired the wrong way and they should be men, and there's men that are wired the wrong. It only makes sense. It only makes sense.
Yeah.
But I do also think there's people that are crazy. There's people that have legit mental illness. They're delusional, and they're also very susceptible to influence and very susceptible to, someone persuading them that they are one thing or another thing. Look, it's those like Heaven's Gate cult people who cut their balls off and wore the Nikes and decided to kill themselves when the
Yeah.
comet was near. Remember that?
Yeah.
That's not normal,
No.
right? It's not normal for someone to be able to talk you into cutting your balls off or putting on the purple sneakers or killing yourself when
Yeah.
the comet's close
Yeah.
because there's a spaceship waiting that's going to take you to Xenu or wherever the fuck you're going. Right? That's not normal either. So we know that people are subject to very irrational behavior under the influence of other people's suggestions or other people's, persuasion.
Yeah, definitely.
And this is a thing today where you have to wonder, like, how many of these people are legitimately trans? How many of these people are legitimately dealing with, like, a real mental issue that's causing them to shift from male to female and back again? And why is it that we can't ask these questions? Because why is it that even this question right now, I could be accused of being transphobic for asking
Yeah.
how many of these people are ill?
Yeah. Well, both of us are going to be accused of transphobia after this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would agree with that. I do think that gender dysphoria is a legitimate phenomenon, and I do have a lot of empathy for people who are suffering. And I think for adults, they should be allowed to transition if that's what they decide to do, if that's something that will help them feel better. My issues with the kids, I don't think it's appropriate for children to be transitioning, and I can talk a bit more about why. But I think in terms of the pathology aspect, I think because gender is so trendy right now, and in the past you might have seen this kind of pathology manifest in a different way, but now because everyone is saying gender is the way to express, I think people also see if you have a problem in your life, they think it's gender related. So say with someone with a personality disorder, and people like a lot of attention, they like to, it's always about them and their identity shifts a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So this could very well be what it is, and now they're being basically rewarded for that.
Yeah, that's the issue, right? That you're dealing with incredibly indulgent people, which do exist, and they find this pathway to massive amounts of attention.
Yeah.
This is I had to construct a bit to mock Caitlyn Jenner.
I saw it.
But it was a very complicated bit. Like I had to figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
I was like, obviously this is nonsense and foolish, but I don't want to appear cruel. So what is the way to do this? So my way was to mock myself mercilessly, and which is kind of true. Like I really do have 3 daughters, and I really do get brutalized in my house. Like I really do think they chip away at my manhood. It's kind of a joke. But, it really is. It's all girly in my house. My fucking house is so girly. Everyone's girly. They're always talking about girly shit. It's kind of hilarious.
Yeah.
But the joke was that if my manhood was a mountain of marbles, every day they take 2 marbles. They just take one.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even need these. These are, what do you care? God. And then that I'm not going to go out like Bruce Jenner. And that one day that so I had to concoct this whole thing that they were demons, which is how they conjured up all that money. Like how else would they have hundreds of millions of dollars through no discernible reason?
Yeah.
There's no way you could like explain to someone how they made so much money if they didn't understand our culture. It'd be totally irrational, right? So the idea was that they did this. But why I did it was I wanted to sort of mock this thing that was happening where you got a male Kardashian. That's what he is. And who doesn't believe in gay marriage, who decides he's a woman, which I firmly believe he's trans. I'm not denying that at all. But our obsession with it and rewarding him with ungodly amounts of attention. This motherfucker won the gold medal, okay, in the decathlon. Was it decathlon? Was, right? Yeah. He was on the cover of Wheaties.
Yeah, yeah.
He was a fucking U.S. superstar athlete. And then no attention after that. He was the whipping boy of the Kardashians on their TV show. They mocked him. It's like, here's this one person with fucking talent in your
Rob
whole
too.
house.
Don't they mock Rob a bit?
Yeah, because he's fat. But then they go right to that. He becomes a woman, and now he is the toast of the town.
Yeah.
He wins Woman of the fucking Year. He's a woman for 6 months, and he wins Woman of the Year. He wins ESPN Athlete of the Year. He hasn't been an athlete in fucking decades, since Nixon was president, right? Or Carter. Who was it? Either way. This is madness.
Yeah.
Like this is we're not treating this in a balanced way. We are rewarding people that instead of like, because people are so they're so ready to proclaim their progressiveness and so excited about it that they instead of treating them like as an equal, they go completely the other way.
Yeah.
So they're definitely not prejudiced. They're definitely not discriminating against them, but they're absolutely inflating what this person is.
Yeah.
And they're making it a big giant deal that they're trans. Like, it's great to support people. I would like to live in a world where there's no racism at all. So you could mock everyone equally.
Yeah.
Like, this is my big problem with real racism. There's a lot of dummies in every race, but you got to be real careful picking on some dummies, like especially if you're a white male, straight white male, oppressor.
You guys
know,
are the devil nowadays.
the devil! Especially if you look like me. I look like the devil. So this is a real problem with like looking at things in a balanced perspective because you're not allowed to. You're not allowed to. Like even what you said earlier, you said gender dysphoria. That's considered transphobic.
Yeah, you can't even say that anymore, even though that is a legitimate medical condition.
Yes.
It's because some people see it as you pathologizing being the way someone feels, I guess. But in my mind, I don't think the issue is the pathology. I think it's fine to acknowledge there are certain things, like any medical condition that causes you distress and impairment. That's the definition of a psychiatric diagnosis. So you should be able to recognize that it's not a bad thing. I think the bad thing is the stigma that comes along with having a mental disorder. So that's what
Yes.
should be fought. It's the stigma aspect, not calling something a mental disorder. If someone's really suffering, that's not a good thing.
No, it's not a good thing. And also the denial of these conditions and the denial of the science behind these conditions. This is the issue with progressive people today, is that there's certain things where they embrace science and certain things where they deny it. And in gender in particular, seems to be so hotly contested. And I don't know when this happened. It seems to have happened right in front of our face, like it just came out of the ground, like a plant that was growing in the cracks.
And now it's too late. You try to stomp it out and it won't go away.
It's weird. I'm wondering where the shit. Like I didn't see this coming, and it's fascinating to see.
Yeah, I think feminism is part of it. The mainstream aspect of this really far left feminism. I used to call myself a feminist. I don't anymore, just because the things that people used to say feminism stood for, like hating men, being I don't know.
But they don't say that.
Well,
no
they
one
do.
says,
Some of them do.
Do they say
They
that?
say they hate men. Oh yeah, I have friends who say, my male friends who say to me, my female friend said that men are trash. Is that normal?
Well, there's a woman that I know that's a feminist that has on her her Twitter account, it says, "Trust no man," like just openly proclaiming that.
Yeah.
Well, if you're straight, good luck. Good luck with your life. If
Yeah.
you're saying trust no man.
But imagine if you said it about women.
That would be a
trust no-
terrible thing.
Yeah, that'd be awful as well. But
Yeah, you'd be
it's
a
acceptable.
misogynist.
It's acceptable to hate on men now.
Well, nobody criticizes misandry. It's not something that gets brought up.
Yeah.
I've never even said that word before. I've only written it and said it, or written it and heard it.
I mean, I get it. I do. I think feminism at the core had some good aspects in the beginning, but it's just gone off the rails more recently.
Well, equality has great aspects, but I think the problem with any white power is obviously awful, right? You say white power. Well, you're what you mean is you're racist against other races. You're into white people, but brown power's okay. Brown pride's okay, right?
well,
okay.
nowadays they see it that way. Yeah.
Male pride is not
okay.
good. Not okay. But girl pride
Yeah.
is fine.
Yeah.
Girl power is okay.
Yeah.
It's fucking weird
Yeah.
because you're generalizing. You're lumping yourself into a group of people just because you all have vaginas.
And
That
the thing is,
seems
women,
insane.
we don't all think the same. But the minute you, as a woman, say something that goes against girl power, they will descend on you.
Yes, I've seen that too. Well, it's like you're threatening the collective agreed upon narrative.
Yeah.
And it's like the way girls treat sluts. Girls get very mad if a girl just decides to have sex with as many people as she wants. Because then you're fucking up this whole economy of controlling the narrative of when women decide to or
The
not
value
decide.
of sex
Yes.
goes down that way too.
Yes, which
Well-
is why prostitution's illegal.
Yeah, I see both sides. I see some women, which I find interesting because I think it's confusing for young women now who are starting to date and they think, I don't really want to have casual sex, but I'm being told that's what I should do.
Is that
And
what they're being told?
I think so. I think
By
that
who?
By the media. More like it's empowering to go out and sleep with as many people as you want and to be like a man. Like if you look at college campuses and how there's quite a bit of casual sex going on, and I don't think that's for everyone. I think from an evolutionary perspective too, women don't like that as much.
I was talking to a friend of mine today about this, who was in the military, and he was saying what's crazy about certain branches of the military is you have like 100 men to one woman, and this one woman, especially like if they're deployed, and they have the pick of the litter, and they'll just fuck a gang of dudes. And
At the same time?
I've never thought about it that way before, but he was like, well, everybody just sort of agrees that nobody has this one girl, like that nobody is going to own her, and that she can have sex with as many guys as she wants. So like what he was saying is like, at least in his experience, that the whole dynamic of male-female relationships shift.
Yeah.
And these girls can basically date as many of these guys as she wants. It's kind of interesting.
And they don't shame her for that.
Well, they can't because there's only one.
Yeah.
It's like they don't want her to get angry at them.
True.
It's like I didn't talk to him about it a lot. We only spoke about it for like 10 minutes, but I was like, that's kind of crazy. I never even thought about that dynamic, like that's sort of a scenario where there's 100 men and one chick.
That's a lot of men.
That's a lot of men. Good luck with all that. You'd get sore. And you'd be like annoyed. Like, you'd be like, "Please, can you leave me alone? I need to go to sleep."
How much time does she have, you know?
How much time does she have? Yeah. Especially if you're in the military. You've got tasks.
Yeah.
There's things you need to do.
You'd be tired.
Yeah. But it's the dynamics shift according to like what is available and who's there and what kind of a culture you live in. People adapt, are very malleable to different climates and different cultures and the way people treat sex and don't treat sex. And this is when I think what happens is people tend to react very aggressively or very strongly when someone is doing something that is different than the way they're doing things. Because this would possibly indicate that there's another way, or maybe their way's wrong, or maybe, you know, it's just, and especially when it comes to sex, people get very strange.
Yeah, oh, they do.
Like when people find out that people are in open relationships. Like I have a good friend of mine who's in an open relationship, and it's so fascinating to watch all the people, like, you let guys fuck your girlfriend, bro? And he has to sort of discuss it, and like, yes, it's not comfortable for me. I wish I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy it.
So why do they have an open relationship?
I don't know. I mean, you have to talk to him about it. I mean, he's got a bunch of different answers. I think the main answer is he wants to fuck other people and she wants to fuck other people, and so they just decide to do it that way.
Okay.
And they were together in a monogamous relationship for a while. But I think, if I'm correct, I think they've been in an open relationship longer than they were in a monogamous relationship.
How long were they monogamous for?
I would have to ask him. I
Okay.
think more than a year. You know,
Okay.
maybe 2 years or something like that. And then it's
Yeah.
been like 4 years of open.
Okay, wow. Yeah, I mean, open relationships are actually pretty common. Consensual non-monogamy, there's one study that showed 1 in 5 Americans have actually tried it. So it's pretty common. Me personally, I'm monogamous, but I think, you know, people should do what they want to do if it's consensual. I think, you know, obviously having been a sex researcher and now someone who writes about sex research for a living, I'm very sex positive, and I think a lot of the problems that we see and a lot of the suffering and distress and issues that people have in their lives could be solved if our world was more sex positive. We could just talk about sex like anything else.
Right. Like the shame of it is the real problem, right? And this is what I'm saying, that people, when you're living a life that's different than the way they're living their life, people get very aggressive about it. Same way, I mean, sober people tend to get aggressive about people who enjoy drinking or people who enjoy smoking pot or taking mushrooms or something. They get very shitty about it sometimes. And it's because it's very polar, very opposite of the way they're living their life, and they don't want to see anybody living their life in a very different way but also being happy. They think, well, this is not how I do it, and this is contrary to my values, so you must be doing something wrong.
Right.
Oh, you need alcohol to get by? Is that what you need? You need to, like, oh, you don't need that drink. I don't, but I want it.
Yeah.
Can I just have it? If I have a glass of wine, I get happy. Who's getting hurt here?
Yeah.
And like, you're going to start doing heroin, and then you're going to wind up in the gutter. I never have.
Yeah.
Never been on heroin, never been in the gutter.
Yeah.
Been alive for a while. Nothing's happened.
It could be a bit of projection too, you know. I think
sure.
for someone who's dealt with substance issues, that the fear that, you know, it's very easy for someone else to fall down the same hole.
Right. But it's this thing that people living a different way is somehow or another threatening. Unacceptable and threatening to their perceptions of what you should be doing with your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, this is very unrelated to the whole, I mean, but it's not. It's when it comes to gender, I think there's just this thing that people want things to be more easily explained than they are.
Yeah, that's true. I could see that. Because it takes a lot of work to actually go. So people who say that gender is a social construct.
That's a good one.
Sounds very nice.
I love saying that.
It's
I'm
not.
start saying that.
It's
for no
not
reason
true,
At all.
but it's infuriating because it's everywhere now. Like, this is what children are being taught in school. Up in Canada, that's what they're being taught in their curriculum, and there's absolutely no truth to it at all. But I mean, if you read the scientific studies, you cannot come away from them saying gender is a social construct. There's
What's
absolutely
the
no way.
argument for it? Like, if you were arguing for it.
That I guess the idea is that women should be equal, and obviously as a woman I believe that, And so any sort of subjugation of women must somehow be imposed by society. Because if we acknowledge that women are different biologically in any way, that's going to be used as justification why they don't deserve to be treated the same as men, or they're not as capable as men.
But why is different subjugation, and why is different incapable, and why is different inferior?
Well, because there has been a history of there being sexism, and
Yeah.
and say so with the whole Google memo thing, and this idea that women are biologically, we are different. Not to say we're not as capable, but if there are any sort of biological correlates to what women find interesting, could that be extrapolated to capability, extrapolated to women should go back to the kitchen, women aren't good at math, things like that. I mean, I get why people don't like biological explanations for things. I think, like you said, I think it's just a lot easier. It's a lazy way to just dismiss the whole thing and say, we don't need to think about it. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, nothing to see here. But it's clearly not true in terms of the scientific research. So there has to be some cognitive dissonance in order to accept that and to preach it and to say it, and everybody has to agree upon it, which is one of the reasons why I think any statements contrary to that get aggressively attacked. And this is part of the reason why these ideas are so supercharged. It's that there's an understanding that it's horseshit. And so when someone challenges it and says it's horseshit, you've been living your whole life with this horseshit. It's almost like a religious thing.
Yeah. Well, okay, I think some people know what the truth is, and they actively lie because they think they're doing something good for women. So they'll say gender is a social construct even though they know it's biological. And I think people who are younger, maybe going through school now, who are being taught this, actually don't know the difference and actually believe it.
But why would they aggressively attack the scientific research that's contrary to that claim then?
You mean the people who don't know any better?
Yeah.
Well, they actually believe that gender is a social construct and these scientists are just sexist and misogynistic and
Right,
want to
but-
keep women down.
But I can get that if you didn't research it, if you didn't look into it. But once you start looking into it, you go, oh, well, this is weird. Like,
Yeah.
there's clearly... I mean,
Do you think people actually look into it, though? I don't think they do. The sense I get is they find someone or some journalist who has some sort of decent-sounding criticism of the literature, and they just parrot that. I don't think they actually go and look at the studies.
Well, I think there's definitely something to that. And I think there's something to this problem that human beings have where they have an idea, and that idea becomes a part of their identity.
Yeah.
And then they start arguing for that idea, and any argument against that idea is an argument against them as a person.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to win.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily looking at things in an objective way where they're detached from the idea and studying it as a thing. Instead, they're arguing to try to win. And I think that is a giant problem with ideas.
Yeah,
And
because they're
it's-
invested in it.
Yes. And it becomes even more of a problem when it gets tribal, when these ideas are attached, like climate change, clearly attached in denial to the right, in support to the left. It's this very strange tribal thing. And that also happens with gender. And it also, like, if you are in support of women's rights, and you are in support of trans rights and LGBTQ and all that jazz, you're almost 100% going to be on the left. It's just one of those tribal things. If you're pro-choice, you're almost always going to be on the left. If you're not, you find yourself in that. Which one was it? Was it Tammy Lauren? I get her confused with that Lauren Southern girl.
Oh, Tommy Lahren.
Those girls are interchangeable in some strange way. Those the hot Republicans.
Tommy Lahren, yeah.
Tommy Lahren.
She's pro-choice.
Right. She got attacked.
Yeah.
Can't be.
Yeah.
Can't be. You want to be on this team. You want to be on the mean white girl team. You can't be pro-choice. You gotta be pro-life.
Yeah.
What about life? What about the babies?
Yeah.
Support the baby. You know what I'm saying? It's like some ideas get locked into ideologies. They get locked into these tribal ideologies. And gender is most certainly one of those.
Well, because people don't want to be without a political home.
Right. That's a very good way of putting it.
Because if you do say someone like Tommy, who's...
Why do I call her Tammy? Because I'm an asshole?
There she
Oh,
is.
was she in trouble? Tommy Lauren will star in pro-life film after the Blaze fired her for being pro-choice. What?
So if you're a pro-choice conservative or if you're a pro-biology liberal, you kind of find yourself in a weird in-between.
So she's just fucking going the other way? She's going the other way? She's going to star in a film? What's a pro-life film? It's like an ABC after school special. Don't have an abortion, have your baby. Yeah. It's weird. Well, she's got to get her ground back. She got kicked off the team a little bit.
It's
Yeah.
a biopic on the Roe vs. Wade case starring Stacey Dash.
Oh.
So
So maybe she's playing a bad person in that movie.
that just made it even more interesting.
Strange. I wonder how many of those things are just distractions. You know, it's so weird. People are so weird with their tribal identities. You know, I just, and I love when they go back and forth and shift from one side to the other. I'd love it when like, well, I'm former conservative, seen the light, or you know, I used to be a liberal till the party lost me.
Yeah.
I love that, and then they go hardcore on the other side.
And it's weird because then everything shifts. It's not just a couple of views; it's everything to be in alignment with the other side.
Yeah, they join a church. Yep, they stop doing drugs. Yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. As a neuroscientist, when something like the Google memo comes out, you are also a woman, and you are also a woman who
I'm also a person of color.
sort of. Are you? How's that work? You're lighter than me.
Am I?
Well, you're a different color. I mean, am I a person of color?
I think you've seen
I'm
more sun
Italian.
maybe than I have.
Well,
You can be an honorary person of color. I'll give you that badge.
but I'm Sicilian, so
Are you- so yeah,
but
you
there's-
are kinda-
there's- Yeah, somebody in my background got fucked by somebody who was darker for sure. But I don't know how that works, because if I was Cuban, I would look exactly the same, and I definitely could be a person of color.
Yeah. I mean,
Right?
I think it's ridiculous. I can't stand that term, for the record, person of color, because those of us who are not white, we don't all think the same, but we all get lumped in as you know, having some sort of.
Well, I had a conversation with a friend of mine about that, who's Mexican. He was talking about Latinos, and I go, well, you do know that Italian was one of the original Latin languages. Like, I am Latino, if you look at it that way. Like, what is Latino?
Yeah.
Like, you're just thinking it was only Spanish? That's not really the technical definition of it.
Yeah.
Isn't Latino, I mean, am I correct about that? I mean, doesn't it emanate from a Latin language?
Think so.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
But it's just like, Italians have been so ingrained in our culture. They came over so long ago that, like, you know, my grandparents came here in the 20s. So that's 100 years ago almost.
So it doesn't count anymore.
Doesn't count anymore. You're not really discriminated against anymore. It's like Jews used to be. It's what's interesting is like if you follow boxing history, and I know you're a martial artist. If you follow boxing history, the oppressed early immigrants are almost always the best boxers at the time. And for a while, it was a lot of Jewish boxers.
Yeah.
A lot of Italian boxers, of course, you know, Rocky Graziano and Rocky Marciano and all these Italian. And then it became Cubans and Puerto Ricans, and then it became, well, there was always blacks as well. But this, like, the immigrants in particular, Irish, like a lot of the Irish immigrants early on, they were thought of as like being some of the lowliest of the low. And now Irish people are 100% white. Like, no one even thinks about it.
Yeah.
Of course they're white. But I mean, they're just American.
That's
Like,
going to be Asian soon. We're going to be 100% white, basically.
well, not if Harvard has anything to do with
No,
it.
true.
They're trying to kick you guys out. What
Yeah.
is it about not trying to kick you guys out? But that is one of the weirder discriminations that is somehow or another slipped under the radar. That they're making it more difficult for Asians to get into Ivy League universities because you guys do so well.
Yeah. I mean, it's racism.
It's
That's all
fucking
that's all it
100%
is.
racism.
It's racism. And I think some of these people who are getting pats on the back for being progressive, about being diverse, I think they just don't like us. And now they have a politically acceptable way to do it.
But why is that? Why would they not like Asians?
Well, some people just don't. Some people are racist.
But is it that, or is it that you guys do too well?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, we throw that whole narrative into question, this idea that if you're not white, you must, you can't be doing well in life. You can't pull yourself up and get on with things.
Yeah, well, that was the argument against the Charles Murray book. What was that book?
The bell curve.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the problems with that book is people were showing the differences in IQ by, as it varies across different geographical segments and across races. And if anything, that book is really like a testament to the master race of Asians. Like but for real, right? Like Asians,
We do okay.
but genetically, like Asian people seem to be superior when it comes to IQ, according to that book.
I think we just work really hard, and our culture puts a lot of emphasis on education.
Did you read The Talent Code? Have you
No,
read that
I
book?
haven't.
It's a really interesting book. I'm finishing it up right now. But one of the things about it is it sort of dismisses the idea of talent. And it goes into depth about all the, not dismisses it, but shows that it's not some magic gift that's bestowed upon people. But what it is it shows all the pathways that lead to the skill developments that we consider talent.
Yeah.
And discipline and hard work, in particular, discipline being a culturally enforced thing, which it is with many Asians. I often talk about my friend Jungsik, who when I was doing Taekwondo, he was on the U.S. team while he was also in his residency in medical school.
Wow.
This guy was a fucking animal. I never met anybody in my life who worked as hard as him. He always looked exhausted. This is his face all the time. He just was always tired, but then would go to work like a fucking savage.
Yeah.
Was in between studying for his, in the middle of medical school, and he would put his backpack on filled with books and run the stairs at the university. He's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But when I would talk to him about it, because my parents were not like that, and his parents were like, my parents were hippies, and they were like, do whatever the fuck you want, we don't care. And his parents were like, you must be a doctor. And he was like telling me about the kind of discipline that he grew up with. And that culturally enforced discipline leads many, 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 many people to succeed. Whereas, the sort of latchkey kids that I grew up with, there was no culturally enforced discipline. You either developed it on your own, you pursued something that you enjoyed and figured out how to become disciplined, or you just weren't. But this thing that's in Asian cultures is what's propelling them forward. If you subscribe to all the different things that are being brought up in this book, The Talent Code, and it makes sense. It only makes sense.
But I think it should be seen as a positive thing that, everyone is capable. It's not just a particular race or a particular group of people that can be successful. I mean, my issue with the whole thing with the Harvard lawsuit is that why are Asians being punished for doing well?
Will you explain the lawsuit for people that don't know what we're talking about?
Okay, so it turns out that for decades now, Harvard has been discriminating against Asians and requiring them to have higher SAT scores than people of other ethnic backgrounds in order to get the same chance of admission. And then more recently, it's been shown that, so Asians do well with SAT scores, they do well with extracurricular activities. So the only way that admissions committees can actually penalize them is through rating their personality. So seeing them as, less likable, things like that, because they're subjective. And, I find it amazing that very few liberal outlets have covered this. The New York Times has been one. But outside of that, it's been very few, and it's really disappointing. And no one I wrote about this for the Globe and Mail, and I was amazed no one had heard about this story at all.
Well, not only that, even when it was covered in the New York Times, everybody's like, okay.
Yeah, let's go on with our day.
It's gone. Yeah. Like in and out.
Yeah.
Whereas if it was about any other subject or any other race or gender that's being discriminated against, if it was discrimination against black people in the same, systematic way or systemic way, it would be outrageous.
Yeah.
People would go crazy.
Yeah.
And even more insane that you're doing it to the most successful people.
Yeah.
The most successful in terms of academics, because that's the problem, right?
Yeah.
The problem
it's not helping society either. I
No.
mean, if I were not Asian, I would be saying the same thing. I don't think it makes sense to take people who are doing well and hold them back.
No.
If you want your society to do well, I think the solution would be to help people who are not doing as well. Don't penalize the people who are doing well.
Well, I think there's a fear of Asians in this, and I'm not bullshitting. And I've been obsessed with this company Huawei recently.
Yeah.
And I got obsessed with them for two reasons. One, because I read an article about the superiority of these cell phones that they're producing that are not being accepted in America. And so then I started doing, I'm kind of a dork when it comes to cell phones and technology. I'm very fascinated by them. So I read a lot of articles about Huawei phones. And they have these fucking insane Leica cameras with 40 megapixel lenses and 3 lenses on the front and 20 plus megapixel selfie cameras. And really intense technology, much higher gigabytes. Like I think they have 500 gigabyte storage capacity,
Wow.
4,000 milliamp batteries. Like they're a superior battery. It's a superior phone. And I'm looking at them like, wow, this is kind of crazy. And then it turns out you can't sell them in the United States. And the federal government has blocked these carriers from having them. And they're saying it's because the Chinese government is involved in stealing information and hacking and all this different stuff. I'm like, okay, all right, maybe, but it's kind of fucking weird that you can't figure out whether or not a phone is being used to like. How are these hackers? How are these like super genius people who program phones? You can't like look at one of those phones and figure out what it's doing. Is it like doing some magic, or somehow or another it's stealing people's information and there's no mechanism that you can detect?
Well, do you think there's another reason why they're not letting them in then?
What I'm worried about is that they're scared that these companies, which are fanatical, maniacal in their aggressive pursuit of dominance in the cell phone markets and technology in general, are going to take over. And they're going to squash all these American companies. And I was like, how much? I mean, this is my own personal speculation, but I'm looking at this. I'm like, how much legitimacy is in that? Because they're right now worldwide. I believe they're the number 3 cell phone manufacturer. I think it's Samsung, Apple, and then Huawei. But you can't buy Huawei phones in America. And I'm wondering.
Yeah.
We're scared of the Chinese taking over. Dum, dum, dum.
Are you going to try and get one of these phones anyway?
I did try to get one, but what I found out is they're not set up for the U.S. market. They're GSM phones, and I'm on a CDMA network, but the GSM phones, they're using different bands. They're not using all the same bands. Like when you buy a phone from China, even if it's for the UK, they don't use so there's some places where you would sacrifice coverage. Say if you bought and if you're a cell phone genius out there and you listen to me butcher this, I'm so sorry, but this is all I got. What's up?
Could you just use it with Wi-Fi only and not connect it to the
Why
network?
the fuck would you do that?
Because you're in Wi-Fi almost
Yeah, but I'm
everywhere
talking
you
about
are.
as a phone.
I know, but
Where's Wi-Fi? You driving your phone? You getting
Everywhere.
Wi-Fi when you're driving your
Yeah.
car? How are you doing that?
Time Warner has Wi-Fi all over LA.
They have Wi-Fi in the air?
They're probably tracking you, but yeah, definitely, 100%.
Okay, so if you're driving in your car, you could be on Wi-Fi and have your cell
And
phone
your
service
car
shut
also-
off?
Cars also now have them built into their thing too. There's
Right,
LTE
but those
built in your car.
are cellular.
I know,
They're
but I'm just
cellular
saying,
Wi-Fi.
It's just a question. Couldn't you also?
But that's a cellular Wi-Fi. So you'd have to have a cellular account. So like who would be your cellular provider?
Then you're just connecting your phone to a Wi-Fi thing, and you're
Right, that's a different thing,
paying
right?
BMW or
Right.
Mercedes or whoever. I
Right.
guess.
So whatever that is, it would be a local
So you
thing.
could use the phone.
But that
that's
you'd
all
have
I'm
to
saying.
be right next to your fucking car to use your phone. That's stupid. What I'm saying is like the problem with this is an article that I read that's explaining the problem from I think it was one of those tech sites, but it was saying that in certain places with limited coverage, you probably would have no coverage with one of these phones, whereas it would work okay if you were in New York or in Los Angeles or
Right.
Chicago or something like that. But if you went to the boonies,
Yeah.
where you might get, if you have Verizon, you probably could be able to text your friends or get a phone call out, but you wouldn't be able to do it with that
It'd be a
phone.
lot harder, yeah.
It's just not optimized for our networks.
Well, hopefully it'll change.
Or not. Or not. They just keep squashing them. But I wonder, the problem is I believe they think Huawei is connected with the communist government.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I don't want that.
They're completely integrated. So the separation of business and government over there it's very sketchy, right?
Yeah.
The fuck do I know? I just wonder if there's a fear of Asian success.
Yeah, I mean,
How could that be though? If the Samsung is everywhere.
they're going to come for everybody, so they're coming for us right now. It's only a matter of time,
Who's they?
The people who want equality of outcome for everyone.
Oh, who are those people?
The people who are really into identity politics.
Do you think? I didn't really think that's what was holding back Huawei.
No.
I thought it was the government.
No,
the
I can
government
see
was
that.
worried about them getting too much money and power.
Yeah,
that
but I
the
guess if you're
Chinese
asking me in
government-
terms of my view on things and in my experience, that's where I would take it.
So the equality of outcome people, the reason why they're trying to keep Asians or at least limit the number of Asians, but doesn't that have the opposite effect? Doesn't that make Asians work even harder?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you keep them out of Harvard, they're just going to go to Yale. keep them
Or
out
to
of
go to,
Yale.
I think
they're gonna
Caltech doesn't have numbers like that. So at Caltech, there are a lot of Asians there because they don't.
They don't discriminate.
Yeah.
So they just dominate. So you could use Caltech as a petri dish.
It could be like
for
a
Asian
control
dominance?
group. Yeah.
But what's wrong with that? It's like it doesn't.
Discrimination?
But no. The other thing, like what's wrong with certain cultures dominating?
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think, well, I mean, if you're asking me in terms of what people see as a
Yes.
problem, I think because it looks as though other groups are not getting a fair chance. It doesn't make people
Right.
feel good.
Right.
Because it means that you're acknowledging at some level that some people are doing better than other people, and that makes some people uncomfortable.
Right. It's the participation trophy
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah, the equality of outcome world. Yeah, that's exactly what it is, right? But it's gone to a place where it becomes indefensible. So instead of trying to raise up people whose scores are lower and give them an equal opportunity, or take people from impoverished areas with poor education and give them more of a chance, which is
Yeah.
what affirmative action was supposed to be about.
Yeah.
Instead of that, you're doing it from the top down. You're going, oh, no, there's too many of these people that are doing good. We're going to squash it. We're going to limit their ability. But how could they do that in good conscience? That's what's crazy. But doing it from that perspective, doing it like looking at a race that's super successful that is also a minority and saying, too many of them.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think these people do think they're doing something good. They're doing it for the better of society and
I'd
for
like to
these
see
other
that
groups.
argument.
I'd like to see it too.
Have you ever talked to someone about it that's pro discrimination against Asians?
I have. After I wrote that column for the Globe and Mail, a number of people came out of the woodwork to tell me how wrong I was. And there were some,
white.
some Asians too.
Really?
Yeah.
What'd they say?
Well, to say don't let yourself be used by the far right to justify, taking down other groups.
Oh, that's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah. So that's one way that you could look at it. But
How is that way possible to look at it? That doesn't even make any sense. How would the far right
so the far right,
latch a hold of the superiority of Asians in academics?
because there are other racial groups that they don't like, or I guess they dislike more than they dislike Asians. So they'll use Asians as a way to justify discrimination against those other groups. I don't really buy that. But
That's a shit
That's one
argument.
argument I've heard.
That
yeah.
argument sucks. I'd like to sit down with someone with that argument. That's
Mm-hmm.
a stupid argument. That argument doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
But what I find the most sad is there are Asians who are totally fine and they say, I'm willing to give up my spot for someone else because I think diversity is important. And I think
That's someone who needs friends. You need friends so bad. You're willing to say that. But that's a virtue signaling thing. That's one of those.
I hope so. I hope it's virtue
Oh.
signaling. It's not someone who actually thinks that way.
They could actually think that way, but the people who cut their balls off and killed themselves because they thought the comet was coming and the spaceship was behind it, they thought that too.
Yeah, people think all kinds of things.
They think all kinds of things. Yeah, and that is one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to you, is that people do think all kinds of things. And I want to talk to neuroscientists and figure out what's happening here. What is it?
Yeah. You were saying something about the Google memo earlier, though.
Yes. Yeah, I had James on, and, he's kind of fucked now. He doesn't really have a home. He doesn't have a place to go. And in terms of like
Politically,
or in terms of having a job. He's like almost unhireable. I don't know if he's employed now, but he's in this lawsuit with Google, and scientifically, he has every point in the world. I just don't know if it's ever going to hold up in this climate.
yeah. So I actually got a chance to talk to James as part of, so there's a podcast, Wrongspeak, that I host with Jonathan Kay. And our first episode was actually about James Damore and his saga, and basically what I took away from that whole thing. It's been almost a year now. It's amazing how the media could not get it right, and I feel that they intentionally smeared him. It wasn't that people didn't understand the science, that they very intentionally said, we don't like this, we want to get clicks, or we want to basically sacrifice this man for our agenda.
I agree with you, and I don't think it's just the media. I think it was the CEO of, was it YouTube, that was saying that it was promoting harmful
I think it was
gender
the
stereotypes.
VP of Google put that statement out, but other
Yes.
people, yeah.
But one of the women that ran YouTube was talking about it too, and the way she was describing it was as if he was talking about women being inferior, and that's not what he said at all.
That's not what he said.
And not only that, they neglected to promote the fact that it was at least a page and a half of that memo was about how to encourage women
Yeah.
to be more active in tech.
Yeah.
This was not an anti-woman screed. It
No.
was,
No. And I mean, if you hear what he had to say when I spoke with him, he very much was for equality and very much was for men and women working together, and he's not a misogynist. I think it's crazy that that's the narrative that continues to go on now.
well, the problem is he actually cited the studies that showed why people choose different professions, why people
Yeah.
gravitate towards different activities and different professions based on gender, and these are actual studies. So in citing those studies, he cited something that's contrary to this promoted narrative, and that's where he was shut down. Hence the title of your podcast, Wrongspeak. He did Wrongspeak.
Yeah, he
right?
did. Yeah. And the thing is, though, the most important aspect of the podcast is that the things that people are saying, there's some truth to it. It's not just crazy, loopy ideas, right? There's truth to it, but for some reason we still can't say it. And why is that?
I don't know why that is, but the problem with denial of any facts is that the people that are opposing you now have evidence that you're a loon, right? Like one of the problems with the left and this really radical progressive behavior that's in denial of science is now the right gets to look at the left and go, look, these people are out of their fucking mind. Why do you
Yeah.
trust them about abortion? Why do you trust them
Yeah.
about this? Why do you trust them about climate change? Clearly, they're loons. And this is, this is just weird, toxic, tribal behavior.
Yeah, because I mean, how can you legitimately deny, like you're saying, men and women are different? When you say that, people stop listening.
Right.
They do think you're a crazy person.
Yeah.
And they miss the larger point, because there are some people who will look at that and say, okay, men and women are different. That must mean women are not competent. So instead of having this more nuanced argument or discussion about we can be different, but that doesn't mean women are incompetent, they just simply say, you want to say that men and women are the same, so we're not even speaking at the same level in that case.
Well, it's so foolish, and it's there's clearly differences between men and women, and there's clearly differences inside genders. I mean, there's human beings vary widely and wildly, and it's one of the more interesting things about us. I mean,
I think it's
just
a good thing.
It's a fascinating thing. I mean, the whole thing has got to go like this. It's got to move around, and the only way it moves around is if everybody's different. If everybody's just a block,
Yeah.
the same shape, the same density, the same size, like what is that? That's
It's boring.
Well, it's not just boring. You're not going to have a competent society. It's not going to work. Like, you need soft and hard. You need both. You need something in between. You need far extreme right to polarize and activate the far extreme left. I mean, I really think you need a guy like Trump to get people to be more politically active and more socially active. I think in many ways he does the left a service by providing this like ridiculous figurehead of what's possible with ego and greed and right wing gone amok. You know, the Steve Bannons and the Breitbarts and all that stuff. Like, that stuff empowers the other side, and the good thing about it is somewhere in the middle is like a balanced, healthy society, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll be able to achieve that someday. But I mean, this is the argument always, is that you cannot have light without dark. You cannot
Right.
have good without evil.
And the pendulum is going to swing back, hopefully. We're just waiting for that
Has
time to happen.
It always does.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to always do that. I just would hope that with the amount of information that's available today, that we can look at the actual studies that are being done on gender, on sex, on biology, and don't look at it in terms of, don't quantify it in terms of this side's better or that side's better. Just look at it. What fascinating differences. This is amazing and it's interesting. And there's a lot of dummies that are men, and there's a lot of dummies that are women. There's just dummies.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have anything to do with one gender being superior or one gender being inferior. It's just human beings have a lot of variability, and there's a lot of different things that a lot of inputs in you developing and becoming a 30-year-old person that happens to be talking to this other 30-year-old person. Your path to get to wherever you are, there's so much going on. There's influences in terms of your environment, your education, your life experiences, your family, your loved ones, there's so much that leads to you being who you are today.
Yeah.
And it's really fascinating to study that, but only if you're allowed to actually look at it.
And be honest with
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Because there's no point otherwise. If you're just going to keep pumping out, like from a research perspective, if you go in, the only scientists who are going to look at this stuff now are the people who know what they're going to find in advance. They're not going to publish anything that's going to upset the public. So in my mind, there's no point to even do that kind of research because that's not actually science, what you're doing.
Yeah, that's really crazy, right? That's where it gets really crazy, where you're not even allowed to do certain kinds of research. Or if you are doing it, you're going to be categorized, oh, he's alt-right.
Yeah.
Or you're a conservative, or
Yeah.
you're a whatever you are.
Bad person.
You're a bad person. you're Wrongspeak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did you decide to call your podcast that?
I mean, it's a throwback to Orwell, obviously, in 1984, and this idea that by controlling language, the government can control how people think and what reality is. And what I find interesting is with the topics we covered. So first episode, we talked to James Damore. Second episode, we talked to Lindsay Shepard and looked at what happened at Wilfrid Laurier University. And then the third one is rapid onset gender dysphoria. So looking at this trend in adolescent girls who come out as transgender even though they've had no previous signs of gender dysphoria. And so with all of them, these issues are all super taboo and all these people have been mobbed. And in the case of rapid onset gender dysphoria, you see the parents who are being called transphobic for questioning, is my daughter really trans? We're just trying to get at the truth, really. We're trying to understand, why is it we can't talk about these things? Why is it we're in such a situation now that the response to any sort of unpopular idea is to be mobbed and to attack people and intimidate them and shut the conversation down? Like, how do we stop that from happening?
Explain rapid onset gender dysphoria, because I'm not really aware of that.
So it's this phenomenon that's been growing more recently.
How recently?
I'd probably say in the last 10 years, there's been a switch. So before, referrals to gender clinics of kids who are feeling that they are born the opposite sex is predominantly boys. And then suddenly there's been this explosion of girls. And so when you talk to the parents, and it's interesting, when you listen to the episode that we did, their stories are so similar. They're literally identical. Their daughters have always been gender typical, so they're always very girly girls. They've never been gender dysphoric. They go through puberty, they develop, there's no problem there. And then usually what happens is there's some sort of, educational session at school, or one of these girls, their friends come out as trans, and then the daughter says, oh, I want to be a boy. And so if you take that child to a professional, like a therapist, the therapist has to affirm. The therapist can't question that. And so you have these girls, a lot of them have autism or they have other mental health issues. They're not getting treated for those issues. Instead, they're being told, okay, if you want to transition, we'll help you. And like I said, I'm not against adults transitioning. I don't think it's anyone's place to tell an adult what to do. And I think transitioning can be beneficial. But you want this, if someone transitions, you want it to actually help them feel better. And for these girls, if the issue is not even about gender, it doesn't make sense for them to transition.
Now, this rapid onset gender dysphoria, is this typically females?
Yeah, almost all females.
What is the cause of that?
I think it's social contagion. I think part of it is for some of these girls, they are a bit socially awkward. And so when they come out as transgender, suddenly everybody loves them and wants to support them. And I think as people should for trans people, because obviously it's a difficult thing to go through. But I think there's an aspect of it that people aren't talking about, that kids are coming out as transgender just because it gives them acceptance.
An extra reward.
Yeah.
There's a reward in terms of the attention they get.
Yeah. And
Wow.
also, I think for girls, puberty is not a fun time. Puberty is not a fun time for anybody. But for girls...
Well, I wouldn't know.
You didn't go through puberty? Okay.
I did.
Okay.
I did. But I mean, for I love when people say, well, it's harder for guys. What the fuck would you know? You've never been a girl.
I think it's hard for everybody. Everyone is kind of awkward and lanky,
Life is hard. Life is weird. Being a person, being a finite organism clinging to a ball that's spinning 1,000 miles an hour, hurling through infinity, that's weird. Mm-hmm. Life's weird.
Yeah.
And then the fact that your biology changes and you get inundated with hormones. And It's just the life that we live, and then adapting to culture and trying to figure out how to be accepted.
Yeah.
And I think that certainly plays a part. This rapid onset gender dysphoria, how is this being treated? Like in terms of like how is this being accepted in academia? How is it being discussed in the literature? And what are the recommendations for what to do about it, or the descriptions of what it is?
Well, there's only been one study so far that's been published because it is such a new phenomenon and because it is so hard to do this work. Because, I mean, people call it a myth. Pretty much anything that counters the transgender narrative is considered hate speech. So as a researcher, if you try to do any research on this issue that goes against what trans activists say is acceptable, you know you're going to get into trouble. So no one wants to touch it. So there's been one study that did show, with girls especially, it's very much about being influenced by friends within a peer group. I think there's some crazy high number in terms of the number of girls that will come out as transgender one after the other. So it's real. But I mean, I get why some people find it threatening, because it suggests that maybe trans people aren't really transgender. Maybe the way they feel isn't legitimate. But in terms of the way to treat it, these parents are at a loss. I mean, these girls are not getting treated for the underlying condition. There was one parent we spoke to. He saw 9 mental health professionals. Every single one said that your daughter's not transgender, but they couldn't go on the record as saying so. I think only one went on the record as saying so because they're terrified.
They're terrified of losing their job. They're terrified of being attacked.
Yeah, definitely.
It's so interesting when you watch the similarities between any group that feels that they're being maligned or that are being very defensive about their position and trying to hold strong and aggressively attacking people that are against it. Mm-hmm. In many ways, this sort of behavior is mirrored in the Second Amendment people. Like the people that are pro-gun. Mm-hmm. Like if you tried any gun restrictions or any gun legislation or any changes in the laws of gun control, they aggressively go after it. Mm-hmm. They do whatever they can to keep things the way they are now and show how much positive benefits guns have and how many people are saved by guns. But it's this thing. Besides the gun, take the gun out of it, and it's the defense of the idea.
Yeah,
it's like they're committed. Yeah, they identify with being a person who's a gun nut.
Yeah.
Or a gun supporter, or Second Amendment, freedom loving. I got a fucking eagle on my back. That kind of shit.
Yeah.
It's like, and it's the same thing with trans people. Like anything against anything, what you're saying, this is impossible.
Yeah.
This thing that you're talking about, this rapid onset gender dysphoria, being autistic people, that is transphobic. And they get super hyper aggressive about it. Instead of saying, oh, well, whoever this person is, well, if they're a trans person, instead of saying, well, I am legitimately trans, but it's entirely possible that there's a broad spectrum of human behavior and human thought, and that some of these people have a real issue. And I could see the reward, especially in today's climate. When you look at today's climate, that would be an interesting study, right? If you look at the climate of today and the support of trans people and the attacking of people that are transphobic and the overwhelming social benefit of supporting trans people, and then you look at the rapid onset gender dysphoria and see if they match up.
What you were saying, actually, I think the majority of trans people are not on board with this whole across the board, everyone should just transition. But I think it's another case of the vocal minority saying, shutting down anyone who dares to disagree.
Well, some trans people get very upset if non-trans people talk about trans people.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
Yeah.
It's like, what are we supposed to do? Supposed to just shut our mouths and let you just run things? Like, what? I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Like, this Scarlett Johansson thing was fascinating.
Yeah.
She was going to play a trans woman in a movie, and people freaked out.
I think,
a trans man, sorry. A trans man in a movie, and people freaked out that she is not trans, and she has this part. That was the same thing that happened with Jeffrey Tambor. Jeffrey Tambor was accused of sexual harassment by people on the set who were trans, who were also very upset that he was the star of a television show that was about trans people, and he's not trans.
Right.
And they were trans.
I get where people are coming from. I do, because I think representation is important to some extent, and so I can understand if you are of a group that isn't being represented in the media, how you would want that to change.
Yeah, but you are also looking at an A-list actress who would bring an incredible amount of attention to your progressive project.
Yeah.
And, you know, it may very well change the tone of the way people accept trans people. Like if it's portrayed in a positive light, it's entirely possible that it would open up, like, especially if people that are on the fence, it might open up their heart and make them look at things differently and say, oh, okay, I see where this woman wanted, you know, she wanted to transition to be a man because she was wired incorrectly or wired to be a man. I shouldn't even say incorrectly. Like maybe you could see her as a person now instead of just as a subject for debate or as a you know.
Well, the only fear I would have is not with your point, but with my point, with the tokenization of people. So to say, okay, if this is a trans role, we need to find a trans person.
Right.
You know, same as with racial tokenization. Like we need to have a certain quota, so we need to have this number of people that fit this. That's my only issue, because then people look at it and say, oh, you only picked this person because of their identity, not because of what they brought to the table.
True, but I could argue against that if you go back and look at like John Wayne when he played Genghis Khan. Like, what in the fuck was that? Or like there's a bunch of those really goofy ones like Charlie Chan. Did you ever see the old school Charlie Chan movies?
I think so. I think
See
I know
if
what
you
you're
can
talking about.
find Charlie Chan. It's fucking ridiculous. I mean, you could even get an Asian guy to play Charlie Chan. Like, the fuck is this? Or they didn't even try to make John Wayne look like he was Chinese.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there was a lot of that going on. Did you ever see that ad where you see the Native American? Yeah, there's the guy who played. There's the guy who played Charlie Chan. That motherfucker doesn't even look a little Chinese.
No.
And he talked in like a real stereotypical, like shitty Chinese accent.
Yeah, I mean, that's a bit offensive.
It's super offensive, right? But that was the sign of the times. And so what trans people would say was like, look, this is the same goddamn thing. This is just, you're looking at it in terms of Chinese people. We're looking at it in terms of our people. And, you know, we're not being represented. You have someone playing us. Do you remember that Native American ad? There was an ad where someone would throw litter out a car window and the Native American guy had the tear run down his cheek.
I do remember that, yeah.
The guy was Italian.
Yeah.
He wasn't even a little bit
Did people
Native
know that,
American.
though?
Well, they do now.
They do now.
Anybody
They're
listening?
They're going to get upset now.
Well, some people know because I didn't, like, I'm not a researcher.
Yeah.
I didn't go deep and investigate. I just read it. I was like, that is hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of these issues at the core, there's something valuable there. I do get the concern and I am empathic for that. But it's to the point now where it's like every little thing. Yeah. You know?
Well, this is the outrage culture. People are like super pumped to find something that's outrageous and then point fingers and attack. And they love it when people back down. Ooh, they're so excited. So like when Scarlett Johansson backed out of that movie, everybody got so excited. We did it, girls. Yeah. We fucking got her. You know, but when people don't back down, they just give up or they get confused. They don't know what to do.
But that's the thing I find when you don't back down, they go and they find someone else. They'll leave you alone.
Did you see what happened to Anthony Jeselnik?
No, I didn't.
They're attacking Anthony Jeselnik. They're attacking a bunch of people for tweet jokes after James Gunn got fired. Do you know who James Gunn is? He's the guy who is the director of Guardians of the Galaxies.
Okay, yeah.
He had some really questionable tweets that were jokes. He wrote some jokey joke things, but it's like about pedophilia, like a lot of them.
Oh, I did see that. Yeah.
Like a lot of them.
Yeah, I did see. There was like a huge screen of them cut and copied and pasted. Yeah.
They're fucking terrible.
Yeah.
The problem is they're not funny.
Yeah.
And they're jokes and they're really gross. But should he be fired for that? No, he's just a shitty joke teller. If you find out he's actually a pedophile, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But it's Disney and today's climate. So then they find that Anthony Jeselnik, the stand-up comedian, has a bunch of also offensive jokes, and some of them about pedophiles. And so they go and try to attack him. And Anthony Jeselnik writes, looking through my Twitter timeline, something along...
It's like a needle in a needle.
Yeah, he said looking for a needle in a needle store on Customer Appreciation Day.
Yeah. It's so true.
It's true. Well, his whole fucking thing is his character. Like Anthony Jeselnik in particular, I'm friends with him. His whole thing is being ruthless and super offensive. Like he had a show called The Jeselnik Offensive. I mean, that's what he does. His character he's an awful person. That's the character. And so they just gave up.
It's totally lost on people now, right? You can't You just can't say things, period.
Well, they're looking for people to back down, and they're looking for people to get scared. And it's fun. It's fun to find a target and fun to let's get him fired, get her fired, take her off that movie. It's fun for them because as a hashtag air quotes activist, what they're doing is they're just attacking, and there's probably some good out of it. But look, there's got to be some good for sure out of real monsters getting arrested, right? There's some good out of like the Harvey Weinsteins and the Bill Cosbys of the world getting arrested and getting busted and shutting down. And we would hope that other monsters in waiting would not act out on their instincts because of the fact they're worried about the repercussions that you're clearly seeing. And that we would hope that people that our behavior as a culture shifts one way or another, and then it's going to move as far away from misogyny as possible. And whether it's through the threat of incarceration or shame or whatever it is that causes it to go the other way, it's probably for the best. As long as it doesn't go as far as all men are pigs, all men are creeps, all men are trash, and that's what we were talking about earlier. Like when it gets to that place, you got to go, well, this is not a good place to be.
Well, also if there is an allegation that's taken at face value right away, because we do see, unfortunately, that some of these allegations are false.
Well, it has to be. This whole idea of believe women. Well, okay, but does that mean don't believe men? Because some women lie and some men lie. So what about individuals? What about human beings? So if we're going to, it's what we were talking about earlier, like white power, or black power, brown power. Well, it's fucking human beings. And as soon as we stop looking at human beings as individuals and we just agree that one group is good and one group is bad, you've got some real discrimination problems there.
Yeah. Well, you can't win in that way either, because you can't look, whether you side with believe all victims or I believe women or something like that. Yeah. There's a hashtag.
Believe women, I think it is.
Or I believe survivors or something like that.
Right.
And then, or if you say you want due process and women lie and, that side of the equation, I think both sides are equally bad because you're not getting at the truth.
Well, we're also in this weird, slippery thing when it comes to human beings and truth, because it's so hard to tell who's telling the truth. If two people see something, like see a car accident, and one person says, well, this lady ran the red light and slammed into the car, and then the person right next to her says, no, she didn't. This other guy ran the red light, and she hit him. And this...
There's a lot of subjectivity in terms of like interpersonal relationships.
Well, there's also a problem with just describing things and language and reality. I don't know if you're telling the truth. I don't know. I mean, especially if it's just like, I leave, I go to the bathroom, I come back, and Jamie says, she just called me a piece of shit. and you're like, no, I didn't. Like, okay, well, who's right? I don't know.
Right.
I literally don't have a mechanism to detect who said what. It is not possible.
Yeah.
So am I just going to believe women? Or am I going to believe the individual? Or am I going to try to like figure this out? Am I going to do my detective work? Fuck, it's very tricky. So when you're dealing with some certain accusations when it comes to human beings, like this Chris Hardwick thing is a perfect example of that. I mean, he was just reinstated yesterday by AMC. And that's a weird one. Because
she wrote it was an ex-girlfriend that wrote something about him. Yeah, I read that.
Well, she clearly didn't tell the truth about some aspects of their relationship. She cheated on him, and that's why he got rid of her or broke up with her. And then she also said he was this terrible boyfriend, and he did all. But then there's videos of her talking about what an amazing boyfriend he was while they were together, about how he stayed with her in the hospital and slept by her bed, and it's like, and she had a host of mental illnesses that she described in their video about like not being able to drive down the street with the windows open because she was worried the germs are going to get in her car and all. And some of those she recovered from, and some of them she didn't. Like, there's another problem with people when it comes to when they're talking about things, they might not even be lying.
Yeah, that's
they just
the
might
thing.
be. They just might have
it.
a distorted perception of reality.
Yeah.
That is another problem with human beings when it comes to any sort of interaction between two people.
Especially after a breakup, I think the way that a person can view the time they spent with someone can very much change based on their current situation or how that breakup happened.
100%. Yeah, on both sides. The real problem though is what we were saying is that human beings, it's very difficult. I can't read minds. You can't read minds. You can't look into memories. So we're relying on a person's description, and then we have to rely on what we know about them, what we know about their ability to describe things accurately, what we know about their perceptions of reality, their delusions, their clarity. It's fucking super tricky.
Yeah. I mean, my rule of thumb, what I would say to people is unless you know the two people, I don't think you can ever really know what happened. So in that case of, say, you leave and Jamie tells you I said something about you, you're probably going to go with Jamie, right? Because you know him. So I would say the same
Jamie's
thing.
a little crazy. I might go. No. Yeah, I mean, it's for sure. If I didn't know you and Jamie told me you did something fucked up, I would side with Jamie. But even that's weird. Like if I'm not there, if I don't know, if you say I didn't do anything, I'm like, well, maybe one day you'll be my best friend. And maybe one day Jamie will turn out to be a fucking psycho. I was like, remember when we used to think Jamie was okay? He's fucking crazy.
But that's the thing, too. I think sometimes I do empathize with the women who say, if this happens to them and people say, well, that's a nice guy. I know that guy. That's my buddy. I've known him forever.
Right.
But you didn't date him. So
Right.
how do you know?
You don't know. Right. Yeah, you don't know. God damn it. It's fucking tricky.
Yeah.
You know, have you ever seen that episode of do you ever watch Black Mirror?
I watched one episode, so everyone tells me how amazing this show is, and I think it is amazing, but I saw one episode that really freaked me out. So I haven't
Was it
watched it since.
Crocodile?
No, it was the one about, it was actually about the boy who was a pedophile, and then he was being watched and blackmailed.
Whoa.
Creeped me out.
I didn't watch that one.
Okay.
But there's one called Crocodile.
Okay.
And it is easily the most disturbing episode of a television show I've ever watched in my life. And it has to do with technology that allows people to read memories.
Okay.
And I'll leave it at that because
Okay.
no spoiler alerts here. But it is a fucking dark episode.
It stays with you after, right?
This one does. This one's dark. I will give too much away if I talk about it. But the concept is that they have a machine and they set this machine up, and through this machine they can literally read your memories.
Okay.
Until that happens, we really don't know. And you know, there's been things in my life where I looked back on it and I had a perception, and then I went to the place where I grew up and I was like, I don't remember it looking like this. I don't remember this being so close. Oh, the street's right here. Oh, this is where the house is. Oh. And then you have to kind of like remap your memories. Like, okay, we got to clean these memories up and try to figure out what's accurate and what's not. But then this, I'm just talking about like the neighborhood where I grew up in. But what about you're adding in emotions? Then you're adding in painful emotions because of breakups and perhaps suicidal thoughts and
time going by also.
Yes, time, sure. I mean, it's been absolutely proven that eyewitness testimony is the least accurate piece of evidence that any investigator can ever use in terms of like trying to figure out what happened at the scene of a crime or anything involving any sort of trauma. It's fucking hard with people's minds.
Yeah. And I mean, when we look at, say, the issue with Me Too and the sexual assault and sexual harassment, that I think also some people see this and they think, I want to help this person. So they might reinterpret their situation in a way to say, you know, I also want to help this person.
Well, I think there's clearly, without doubt, been a lot of unchecked sexual harassment in the workplace.
Yeah.
I've always said this, and this is not to say that men and women shouldn't work together. I'm not saying that in any stretch. I just want to get that out of the way really quick. But when men and women do work together, they're around each other all day, and people are sexually attracted to each other, and men are gross, and it's just like this guy that I was having this conversation with today. We were talking about that. I was like, could you imagine being a girl and working in an office, and guys are trying to fuck you all the time, and they're always saying stupid shit to you when you're trying to get coffee, and like. We were talking about gay guys, and he was saying, like, do you have, when he was in the military, would you have a problem with gay people? And it was really funny. He goes, I would want if I was working with a gay guy, I'd want him to like me. So that way he'd try to impress me and he'd do his job better and he'd be real nice to me. And we were laughing about it. But I was like, okay, that's true. But if you were around a gay guy that was always trying to fuck you and like maybe touched your ass when you bent over to pick up some paper or something like that, like that would get real annoying.
Yeah.
And if your job relied on this guy liking you and approving you, which a lot of women's jobs rely on creeps liking them and approving you, it gets fucking disgusting. That's the reality that many women have lived with for decades.
Yeah, I
And
don't deny that. Yeah.
This is going to shift. I'm hoping the even with the far-reaching aspects of it, where all men are trash. I'm hoping the tide's going to just sort of settle back in. It's going to, instead of being over this way, it's going to come back over this way and just balance out in the middle a little bit, and we'll get a better understanding of each other.
Yeah, that's my hope too. And I mean, I hope that there's not so much damage done that's fixable at that point. Because
what damage?
Well, you see, I feel men nowadays are terrified to interact with women. Especially in the workplace.
I think you should be careful anyway. I think we're all way too casual about getting intimate with people, and I've been guilty of it myself in my life at many times. But I think you should get to know people a little bit better. The problem is people are horny, and they're like, I get you, oh, you get me, hey, let's do this. You know, and that's a real problem. And then you hook up with crazy people.
And then you have to keep working with them after.
Yeah, that's even worse. People that have inter-office relationships. And I know people who work in offices where it's strictly forbidden. Like you're not allowed. And then I'm like, well, okay, but what if you fall in love with someone in the office? What if they're the perfect person for you? You got to quit your job?
Yeah. I don't like businesses imposing that. I think people should be able to make those decisions.
Well, but it's a tricky decision.
I would never date anybody at work. And
you say that.
Well, but I don't.
Are you married?
No, I'm not married.
Okay. You have a boyfriend?
No.
Okay. What if you met a guy that you worked with and he was fucking amazing, and he was single and you're single, and you guys just got along great, and he was respectful and he's intelligent, and he's funny and he's interesting, and you like doing things with him?
But there are lots of men in this world who
Get the fuck out of here. That's not true.
There are so many men in this world. Why is it this one person I work with is the only one who's going to be a match for me?
He's the only one you've ever met that's like that.
I don't think so. I mean, but the thing is, I'm very career oriented, so that could be part of why. In my mind,
because you're Asian.
Well,
you're like,
that's
the
Joe, that's
grindstone.
racist.
It is racist. It's racist to say that Asians are determined.
But in that way, I guess I'm a little bit more risk averse. I'm not going to potentially jeopardize my career over a person that I meet that I like.
What if he was willing to quit his job?
Well,
then you would disrespect.
Maybe we could talk. But I'd be like, you're gonna quit your job for a woman? I don't know.
You fucking loser. What are you gonna do if we have kids? Yeah. I see both sides, but then I see, okay, now imagine being a woman who works in the office with this guy who's in love with this woman, and then they have a relationship, and then all of a sudden her career starts doing a little bit better.
That's the thing. And other women like me say, well, wait, we're not sleeping with people to get to the top. Is that fair?
Well, that is the world of the actress. It is, and that is the world of the casting couch.
Yeah.
And this is the not so secret aspect of the casting couch that many people are aware of.
Yeah.
Is that these women fucked some of these men, and we're not talking about rape. We're talking about women who chose to engage in willful sex with people who
transactional.
Yes, transactional is a great way to put it. There's a lot of women who I know who are actresses who were approached by certain types of men who are producers or executives in certain ways, and they said no. And then girls that they know said yes, and their careers advanced.
Yeah.
And this was a thing where people were aware of it. There's a power dynamic that exists when there's a boss and then there's an underling. And there's a person who's working for that boss. And whether it's a producer and an actress, or whether it's a CEO and an employee, when they engage in some sort of a transactional sexual relationship, that makes everyone fucking uncomfortable.
Yeah. But how do you stop that? Do you think it's the industry's job, or how do you weed that out?
I think corporations pretty much across the board now just fire people when they do that. There was a recent CEO of some large high-profile company who had to step down because he was involved in a consensual sexual relationship with somebody. Do you remember who that was? It was real big, something super recent, but there was no crime, but it was consensual sexual relationship with someone who worked for him. Was it? Intel.
Intel.
Yeah. So that, look, people are but they're around each other all
Yeah.
day long. Like, you think about it. If you go home, say if you work 8 hours a day, and it takes you an hour to drive to work, takes you an hour to drive home. That's fucking 10 hours, and nobody works 8 hours a day if you really want to make it, right? You're
Yeah.
working 9 and 10, so it's like half the day is gone.
Yeah.
You get home, you're exhausted, you know, your husband's exhausted, you're staring at each other, you're together like 3 or 4 hours. You have a meal, you go to sleep, you get up in the morning, you go do it again. You're with those people at work more than you're even with the people that you live with. You know, that's really, and that's your waking hours. By the time you get home, you're fucking tired. And if you go to the gym afterwards, well, there's an hour and a half gone there. You might see each other for an hour a night.
Yeah. No, and especially if people are single, I mean, obviously
Yeah.
it's a little bit easier for that to happen as well.
Yeah, it becomes a big part of your social interaction. I mean, how many people, their social circle is primarily the people that they work with.
Yeah.
Real common, right?
Very common.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if it's a consensual relationship, there shouldn't be anything wrong there. But I can see how in this climate, there are all these other, ways of looking at it being imposed on it. So is that really consensual if it's someone who is your boss?
But then imagine, say, if you and Jamie worked together, okay, and you guys had a consensual sexual relationship, and you both were on the same level. You both, and it's not like anybody has any power. But then you break up, you know, and then Jamie comes over to me and is like, "Yeah, I gotta tell you, that doctor's a fucking asshole. He's a bitch." And then you come to me and you're like, you know, Jamie, you know, he looks like a good guy, but when you start dating him, he's a fucking selfish prick. And
Yeah.
Yeah, and
People
then-
need to leave that at home.
yeah, well, definitely becomes a problem in the workforce when you're not just friends. Friends is fine, but when you start having sex with each other, that's when things get crazy. You know, very few people are able to separate sex and emotions with friendship. Very, very few people. That's
Yeah.
that's one of the things that's admirable about these people that are willing to have these open relationships. It's like, whoa, like you can. I know guys like hang out with other guys who fuck their girlfriend.
Yeah.
I'm like, Jesus, you're a better man than me.
Well, some of them like that, though. Like, if they're masochistic, they like the idea of their woman having sex with another guy.
Well, you didn't want to use the word cuck. I like how you went with masochistic.
Well, I mean, I guess that's a technical term, too. We can call them cucks.
Cuck is a compromised word, though, now, isn't it?
Yeah. There's a whole other stuff that comes with that.
Yeah, it gets squirrely. I thought it always meant that it always meant like cuckold, like you want to watch men have sex with your wife.
Yeah.
But then it got to where, what is it? What is it?
So basically, like
it's
you're
so
beta male now.
Beta male. But there's so many different versions of it now. It's become really freely tossed around like a beach ball at a concert. They're just throwing cuck around these days.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's fine if that's what you're into. No judgment there. If someone's into being cuckolded.
Yeah, if that's what you're into. Good luck with that. Just okay, cuck, a man who's desperate for acceptance, approval, and affection from women. Oh. Now it's different. This desperation has led to the compromise of his beliefs and values, the desecration of his dignity and self-worth, and his inability to stand up for himself. Does 4chan write this? And what he deserves as a human being. Example, loyalty, fidelity, and honesty in a romantic relationship. Okay. Okay, look at the example they gave. Hold on a second. I know John's always wanted a girlfriend, but since him and Mary started dating, he's become a cuck. She spends all of his money and flirts openly with other men. I can tell it bothers him, but he's so afraid of losing her that he doesn't say anything. That's a cuck.
Sounds like a male feminist also.
Ooh, I can't believe you went there. I don't. Yeah, that male feminist thing. I've known a few that were real creeps, that were fake creeps. You know, they're like on the side. They what they were doing was they're posturing as an alternative to these men who don't want monogamous relationships or would break the woman's heart or are not willing to compromise and bend to the will of the woman. And they put these women on a platform and worship these women, and I am the alternative. and I'm the powerful alternative, and these men are assholes. And then they try to shit on those men and take those. But all it does is make those men appear even more attractive to these women. Secretly, these men, these feminist men and these women have these weird relationships where it doesn't work, and they're never sexual, or if they are sexual, the women aren't really sexually attracted to them, so they withhold sex, and it gets super weird.
Yeah.
Obviously, I just generalized a lot about a giant group of people's relationships, but what I've seen, they don't run fast, they can't pick things up, they're not attractive, so they're little weasels. They're trying to find another way in.
Yeah. I mean, I think not all men who call themselves feminist are male feminists. So in that, I think men who ascribe to women being equal, that's a good thing.
Yes.
And I think a lot of guys will say, yeah, I'm feminist, because they think that's the right thing to do. That's the socially acceptable thing, and that's the way we should be. But then the ones who run around and say, really, really push it and make that their identity and really sell themselves as male feminists, those are the guys I have an issue with. Because like you said, they're sneaky.
Yeah,
they
sneaky.
know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not being honest.
Well, you could almost always tell, like you see them. They're a type. Mm-hmm. They're an unattractive type. They're not attractive to women, and so they try to figure out a way. Mm-hmm. Like, how am I going to do this? What's going to be the way?
Yeah.
I got to figure out a way to stand out. This is the way. I'm going to just what do these women want to hear? They want to hear that. I'm going to say that.
Yeah.
Egalitarian's great. Someone who believes in equality is great. But as soon as you you're proclaiming yourself to be more interested in the opposite gender and more supportive of them than males. Mm-hmm. And even though you are a male,
that should be a red flag.
That's a giant red flag. You should be into humans. Mm-hmm. I like people. Mm-hmm. I like people. I like them gay. I like them straight. I like people. I like when they're nice. You're nice to me, I'm nice to you. Mm-hmm. That's what I like. Mm-hmm. I don't want you to get discriminated against in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
But I don't want to pretend that one group's better than other groups, except Asians when it comes to Harvard.
The crazy thing is with these guys, though, you see there's been a trend where they actually have a lot to hide, and they usually are misogynistic, and they usually do abuse women, which is the scary thing.
I think what happens is there's a certain amount of resentment that from living this sort of like fake life and having these fake beliefs and doing so just to get the approval of women, and then when it doesn't work out, there's anger and resentment and this just.
Or I think some guys put it on because it's a way of overcompensating for their own guilt.
Yeah, that's true too, probably. Yeah, there's probably a lot of different reasons why men become feminists, and very few of them are good. Mm-hmm. Unless they're just, their idea of what it means is different than my idea of what it means. My idea means, look at that little sneaky fuck. Mm-hmm. That's my idea. Mm-hmm. Because I've just seen so many of them. Yeah. It's like, look, I'm sure some bank robbers are really romantic, interesting poets who just decide this is a great way to make money. Mm-hmm. There's got to be one. But most of them are fucking criminals, right? And this is like how I feel about male feminists. Like, I'm sure there's a bunch of them out there that are really good guys, and maybe through the influence of the people they've been around, they've chosen to identify as a male feminist, and this seems to be a good way to show that they support women. And even if they have to support women over men, look, women have been fucked over for so long, I'm more than willing to do that. And they do it with good intentions. Mm-hmm. That's entirely possible. But a lot of it are creepy little dudes that are trying to get laid, and they're not attractive to women. So they're trying to figure out a way to become attractive to women. And they don't have the confidence to just go, well, aren't we all equal? Aren't we all just all humans? Aren't we all different?
Or work on yourself to make yourself more attractive to women instead of deceiving them.
One of my all-time favorite tweets that I read was a guy saying, I'm not going to describe myself as a feminist until women tell me that I'm doing feminism correctly.
Oh, I saw that, yeah.
Woo! He's like more feminist than regular feminists. Yeah. He's like so feminist.
Like 2,000 times.
Yeah, can't be a feminist until women tell me I'm a feminist. Mistress, please tell me. That dude's got a ball gag on right now. He's like tightening it down. He's putting himself in the shackles. But then there's women like that too. There's women that pretend to be one of the guys, like that girl. Yeah. There's always the one of the guys girl. Like,
People can sense it though. Like I think other guys can tell when a guy is not sincere about being a male feminist, and the same with girls can tell.
Oh yeah. You know the big red flag with girls? Girls who don't have girlfriends. They're just friends with guys. I get along with guys better. Yeah, I bet you do. I had a friend of mine who's dating a girl like that, and all she had was male friends. I was like, dude, I'm like, get out now. Like, this is not going to work.
So tell me, what does that mean?
Girls don't like her.
Yeah.
Girls don't trust her. You can't find any girls.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That is crazy. I'm not saying you shouldn't have some guy friends, but all your friends are guys.
Yeah.
That's a red flag.
No, I would agree with that.
And any guy, you have a straight guy and all his friends are girls.
Yeah, no.
What in the fuck is happening here?
Yeah.
Right? I just don't get along with guys. Guys are assholes. I don't like the way they talk about women. Oh, okay. All of them. All of them do.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Where are you hanging out, dude? You don't like any guys? Okay.
Yeah.
Seems weird.
So what did your friend do?
Oh, he got fucked around on?
Yeah.
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 She was fucking all those guys.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Of course. I mean, the writing's on the wall. Yeah, it was ugly too. The way it went down, I was like, whoa. But that's how it is. You know, I mean, people are always trying to find their way in. Like,
Yeah.
what's my way to get the most acceptance? My way to get the most happiness? My way, and I mean, it's fairly unrelated, but not necessarily to what we were talking about gender dysphoria, about some people choosing that as a path to get a lot of attention. I mean, I think there's many things that people do to get a lot of attention. There's things that people do to stand out as typically unique, right? Like dye their hair pink
Yeah.
or purple or blue, or wear certain things, or do certain piercings. And there's things that people do to like get attention and fit in and find their niche and just do something where it makes them feel like they have some clout in this community of humans.
Yeah. It helps them find other people too who are like them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, they're signaling to each other that we're all equal. We're all similar. We're all in this kind of clan. We're outsiders. You know, it's fascinating. And
I'm all for that. I'm all for people finding each other and, self-expression. It's only when it is having negative implications for other people, that's when it's a problem.
oh, for sure. Yeah. When it's not just a bunch of people finding each other, but a bunch of people looking at the other people and attacking them for not being similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's one of the things people do to sort of affirm their identity, right? You attack the people that oppose that identity, or attack the people that are
but
different.
do people need to do that though?
I wish they didn't.
Yeah.
But they do so often.
They do.
You got to wonder, like, objectively, if you were from another planet and you were watching these patterns take place, you go, wow, look at this creepy little organism. Look at this weird thing that it does.
Yeah.
You know?
Going back to the transgender bullying, I guess, my issue with all of that intimidation is the fact that these kids are not getting the help that they need. And so if we look at something like I was saying earlier about if it's a little boy who says he's a girl, he's likely going to grow up to be a gay man. You can't say that now. And so all of the scientific research suggests that, all the studies ever done suggest that, but you can't say that because it really upsets transgender activists. And so you have all these children now who are transitioning who I think in 5-10 years are going to regret it.
Isn't this sort of similar to what we were talking about earlier, is that historically, trans people have been so discriminated against that it shifted so hard the other way.
Yeah.
That it's gone the other way. Like just what we were talking about in terms of sexism and then harassment in the workplace and sexual harassment and rape was so one-sided that now it's pushing the opposite way. Like I read a tweet once by this woman that said, here's an unpopular opinion, and she was an editor of a magazine. Sure, here's an unpopular opinion. I'm not even remotely concerned with men being falsely accused of sexual harassment or assault. And she was attacked.
Yeah.
Brett Weinstein retweeted it and pointed out how wrong this idea was and how crazy this is to take allies who are falsely accused of sexual harassment or assault and not being concerned about that. Like you're only concerned with your own gender.
Yeah.
And this is a perfect example of an intelligent person that's thinking in this really crazy discriminatory way, because in her mind, her team had been fucked over so many times that it's time to fuck over that other team. If we lose a couple of people, hey, we shoot some drones into some apartment buildings and a few civilians die, at least we got the terrorists.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I understand that, like the anger that comes with that. I think for the people who are the most militant, so not to say that of this particular person, but I think of women in particular who are the most militant about this movement. I think they really just have been hurt badly by men, and it's a way for them to express that.
But you can't say that.
No,
if you say
can't.
that these women that are angry about men, that they've been hurt by men, so now they discriminate against large groups of men because of that pain. If you do that, like, you're a self-hater. You're
internalized misogyny.
Yeah.
Which is sad. I mean, but you can't actually argue with it.
Where does this balance out, though? Does it balance out to a point in our children's future or our children's future where this is no longer a concern, like cannibalism is no longer a concern, or a very, very slight concern? You know, where it's an aberration, where it's a very, very rare thing. I mean, that's the ultimate goal, right? Is that we reach a point in our society where we do not care if someone's gay. We do not care if you're a girl. We do not care if you're a boy. And we're not mad if you're not attracted to us. I mean, that would be a wonderful thing, right? If we get to a point where people are just comfortable in their own skin.
You mean this craziness? Like, where is it eventually going to lead us?
Yeah, I mean, culturally, across the board, whether it's male versus female, whether it's trans versus straight, all of this, gay versus straight, whether, progressive versus conservative. I would love it if we got to this point with all this chaos and calamity and arguing back and forth. It would be fantastic if we can get to a balance point.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I do think we're coming up to that point, because more and more I see people are saying that they're not okay with this. In terms of the things I write about, people reach out to me and say, you know what, I'm so glad you said that. I agree with you. Even the response to Wrongspeak, I really thought that people were going to lose their minds in terms of the things that we said. But, it's been very positive feedback. So I think more people than you might think are actually on board with, wanting to come to a middle ground, and they're not okay with the extreme craziness that we're seeing. So I think that's a good sign. It's just a matter of waiting it out.
I hope you're right. And I hope that we understand why things get extreme, and that as human beings, we can look at it with compassion and say, like you were saying, like the women that are so angry against men, like it's not just because for no reason. Something had to happen to them. Like I had a friend, and he was not an attractive man. And over the time that I knew him, he became more and more resentful to women, to the point where he would just openly say fucked up misogynistic things about women. And it was weird to watch, but it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I see. He associates women with pain. Yeah. And he associates them with just wanting his money or trying to fuck him over. And this is his perception. This is how he looks at women. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah, which is sad, And in that case, women, obviously, not all women are like that. Just like not all men are the men that these women have encountered in life. And you can't generalize from one person to everybody.
No, you can't. But when we look at it with compassion, I mean, hopefully the healthy people, the people that aren't in that state of anger and resentment, that they look at it with compassion, they go, oh, okay, I see why this woman would write that tweet. Like, she's met a bunch of fucked up, shitty dudes, probably male feminists, right?
Yeah, and that she doesn't need to be mobbed over her tweet either.
Trust no men.
Yeah.
Or man. Yeah, that kind of shit. It's like, okay, I get where that's from. I just think there's entirely too much conflict out there.
Yeah. But, I think our society almost thrives on it. I would say the media definitely thrives on it. Because
it's fun.
If you're not angry and upset about something, what are people going to do?
Yeah, I mean, look at Twitter.
I was going to say social media, too.
Facebook's the best, because Facebook, those assholes are allowed to write fucking
forever.
Paragraphs of bullshit.
I swear, do they have jobs? Some of these people,
They do. They
because you
write at
click on the
work.
more, you click on the more thing, and then there's way more.
Way too much.
You think there's just going to be 2 lines, but it's like 6 pages.
Yeah, I think that is a real problem. And I think one of the more unique things about Twitter is that it limited you to 140 characters. And then people complained, so they gave you 280. And now
I feel that's too much sometimes.
it's too much. 280 is too much.
I can't read all that. Sorry.
As a comic, 140 was great because it made you really invest in the economy of words. You really had to make sure that you got your point out as quickly as possible. It's great for joke writing because you can just da-da-da, 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 da-da-da. It's a good way to like really trim down the fat in your jokes. But it's not a good way to express ideas. And that's one of the good things about Twitter is they have this thing where you can reply to your tweet and then reply to that.
Yeah,
and
so
they
you do a
all
thread.
And they all fit in together.
Yeah.
I like that. But I don't like it sometimes because sometimes people just fucking drone on and on and on. And this is a first draft too. Like, edit this shit, bitch. There's too much nonsense in there.
Do you get that with your DMs too? That people just send you a massive block of text?
I don't read them.
Yeah.
I barely skim through my. I can't. I follow too many people.
Yeah.
One of the good things is I get a lot of interesting things in my feed. One of the bad things, I'll get 500 DMs a day. I can't do that.
I saw someone wrote a tweet that said, if you don't like write 2 sentences for the DM, I'm not going to read it. And that was their pinned tweet.
Well, that's aggressive. I read as many as I can. I just can't read them all.
Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah.
It's like you can't reply to everybody either. Like people say, well, how come you never reply to my app mentions? I can't.
Yeah. And you can't like all of their stuff either.
No.
It's too many.
It's too many. Plus, I don't want to read people's stuff. It's just, you don't have the time, and also you're running the risk of encountering too much negativity. And then also things that you disagree with that you want to like, oh, I should say that. That's bullshit. That's not even true. I'm going to tell this guy, this is what actually happened.
Yeah.
And you don't even know history. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to argue with people about random facts or science or anything. I'll look at it and I'm like, okay, this is...
But have you been mobbed before? You have.
Oh, yeah.
What's been the worst?
Oh, one of the big ones was about a trans fighter.
I remember that.
Yeah, that was a hilarious one.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, you guys can kiss my fucking ass. You're out of your mind. You guys are out of your mind if you think that a man who has been a man for 30 years and has taken female hormones for 2 is the same. You put Brock Lesnar, chop his dick off and put him in a dress. That guy's going to maul through the women's heavyweight division like nothing you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah.
Because we're built different. And it's just a fact. And anyone who tries to argue that is crazy. And there's certainly standouts in terms of women who are much more muscular, higher bone density, particularly African American women have very high bone density. But there's a different shape to their hips. There's the size of the hands, the size of the shoulders. Things are different. And also the imprinting of years and years of testosterone. It's just, there was a great article by this board-certified endocrinologist who went over all the things that separate men from women, which should exclude them from competing in combat sports against women. And this woman was called a transphobe, and I mean, she's a fucking endocrinologist, you idiot. She's talking about the science. And she's also talking about the science of, one of the things they talk about is how women, or a trans woman, once they transition to being a woman, they're basically biologically almost exactly the same as women. She was like, no. Not only that, but the bone density is retained by taking estrogen, which is what the problem with women when they have osteoporosis is. They're losing estrogen, they lose bone mass. Well, the estrogen actually helps you retain bone mass. So when a man transitions to a woman and then starts taking estrogen, it's actually helping retain the bone mass that he would have lost by not having testosterone. And then on top of that, reaction times. Reaction times are several tenths of a second faster in general for women than they are for men rather than they are for even professional athlete women. So all these variables that need to be taken into consideration when you're allowing someone to do a sport. And we're not just talking about bike racing We're not talking about, something where someone...
Non-contact.
Yeah, we're talking about the most contact. We're talking about fucking fighting. There's benefits that certain people have. There's physical attributes that there's variables inside the genders, right? There's some men that have gigantic physical advantages over other men, and all of those are taking into you. There's no like even playing field when it comes to even intergender competition or male versus male competition. There's no real level playing field. So the best we can do is say, okay, well, you guys got to be the same weight.
Right.
Let's just make that.
Yeah.
Make it the same weight. And that's as close as you can get. But even in that, there's people that are just physically, they're just going to be better.
Yeah.
There's no getting around it. There's going to be better athletes. They're going to have better genetics. There's nothing you do about that. But one thing we can do is we can keep women from getting beaten up by men and men who transition to being women. And if you think that's fair, you're fucking crazy. It's just not. It doesn't make any sense. And the arguments for it are so shitty and they're so riddled with progressive speak that they're trying to pretend that this is a woman now. This is not a woman. This is a trans woman. This is a male. She has a Y chromosome. She transitioned to being a female. Now she's a trans woman. And if you choose to fight her, and you're a woman, and you know that she's a trans woman, I'm totally fine with that. But that was not what was going on here. What was going on here was this woman who used to be a man for 32 years transitioned to being a woman and it didn't tell anybody. And fought two different women who thought they were fighting a woman and got fucking smashed.
Badly injured, yeah.
Well, I was watching it. It was like watching a man fight a woman. That's what I was watching. I was like, this isn't like she wasn't particularly skillful. It wasn't like she had like some unbelievable background in judo like Ronda Rousey or something like that. It wasn't that. You were just literally watching a former man beat up women who never had the benefit of 30 years plus of testosterone in their body. What
do you think the solution should be then?
I don't know, but I was fascinated by watching the mob come after me for that one.
Yeah.
I was like, this is adorable. But what was fascinating about it was, here's something that I'm not I'm not a real expert in physiology or endocrinology, but I'm a martial arts expert, and I've been doing it my whole life. Like I know the difference. I've trained with women world champions and watched them get mauled by men who are not very good. It's just a fact.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to striking. There's more of a gap in jiu-jitsu, or the gap rather closes in jiu-jitsu because skill and technique take precedent over physical strength. But God damn it, when it comes to striking, you could get a man who's been doing it for 6 months, but just happens to have a lot of fast twitch muscle fiber and it just knows how to hit things hard, and he'll fuck a woman up. It's not good, especially when it comes to kickboxing and kicking and punching. There's so many advantages. And to say that those advantages are immediately cut out of the picture as soon as you transition to being a woman, and within 2 years you should be able to fight women in a cage and not tell them that you're a woman. I was like, this is insanity.
Yeah.
So that was the big mob that came after me.
I think it's interesting that in this, because it is pitting people who would call themselves feminist against transgender activists, and it's basically women are being lost in the mix. So you can't say certain things like, on what planet would it be okay for someone who is born male to fight a woman? But in this case, because this person who's born male identifies as female, you can't call that into question. It
also, there was a real problem in Texas the other way, where what they were doing is being prejudiced against trans people to the point where they wouldn't let a girl transitioning to being a boy wrestle with boys.
Yeah.
They made her wrestle with girls while she was taking testosterone.
Yeah.
It's like, you guys are out of your fucking mind. Like, you're not even recognizing that she wants to compete with boys, which is a disadvantage for her or him now.
Yeah.
Let him compete with boys, because this is a different thing. But then, even then, a lot of boys are saying, well, look, I'm not taking testosterone. I just have testosterone. What if her testosterone is higher than my testosterone because she's taking exogenous testosterone? This is kind of crazy. Like,
yeah.
There's a lot of new ground that's going on here. My concern as a martial arts expert is when you are using ideology to push this progressive notion that, you know, a trans woman is exactly the same as a woman, and you're getting women beat the fuck up because of it. And this is what I felt, and this is what I saw. And they went after me hard for like a year or two, but then it all went away.
What's the worst thing they said about you?
I don't know. I didn't read it. I didn't read it. I read a little bit of it, and then I was like, it really didn't even hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
Because I was like, it's just so stupid. It's like, do you know a woman who's got a hand that looks like that?
Yeah.
Find one. Find one. Because if I took estrogen, I'd still have these. And that's not fair.
Yeah.
It's just not. I don't care. I don't care what anybody says. It's just not. I mean, even a woman with big hands, they're not that big. They're not like Brock Lesnar's hands. There's a difference. There's a fucking difference.
Yeah.
There's a difference in the shape of the jaw. There's a difference in there's so many differences in men to women. And there's so many women that used to be men that transition to being women that are now dominating these sports, and these women feel like they're being fucked over. Like weightlifting. There was this Australian weightlifter who's a trans woman who's competing as a woman and is fucking breaking records left and right. And everybody's like, this is crazy. She's an inspiration.
Yeah.
No, she's a guy. She used to be a guy, and now she's breaking these women's records. Like, what are we doing? This is crazy.
Yeah. But to play devil's advocate,
Please do.
didn't Fallon Fox get beaten by Ashley Evans Smith? Yeah.
Yeah, because she sucks. That's really what it is. Ashley Evans Smith is good.
Okay.
So she's so good. Listen, there's a lot of women that would beat a lot of men.
Yeah.
Women who are not taking anything. Who would beat a lot of men. And it's happened. Jermaine Durandamy, who was a super high-level women's MMA fighter, won the 145-pound world title, beat Holly Holm. She fought a man in a kickboxing bout and knocked him out. It's because she's a fucking beast.
Yeah.
'Cause she's really good and really technical, super strong, and just much better than a guy who wasn't on her level. But she's just super exceptional. But there's also women who fought men who were world champions who got knocked out. There was a woman from, God damn it, she was a female boxer from Holland. Her name escapes me right now. She was a woman that they were always trying to match her up with Christy Martin, back when Christy Martin, the coal miner's daughter, was a famous, God damn it, why can't I remember her name? But she was an elite female boxer, and she got knocked out by a man. It was ugly. And the guy who knocked her out really wasn't very good.
Yeah.
He just clanged her on the jaw and KO'd her. But it was disturbing to watch.
Yeah.
But somehow it wasn't disturbing when Jermaine Durandamy knocked out the guy. Then it was like, yeah, go girl.
Yeah.
You're always going to have people that are higher level skill. And Ashley Evans Smith, who's competed successfully in the UFC, she's very tough. And she beat Fallon Fox.
Yeah.
And this isn't, I'm not against Fallon Fox fighting women that want to fight her. I'm not against that. If they want, I'm not against women fighting men. If you want to do, I'm not a man.
Yeah.
I'm not against people riding bulls. I'm not against people bungee jumping.
Yeah.
I should be able to do whatever
what
the
you
fuck you
want.
want. But don't pretend that you're exactly the same as a biological woman.
Yeah.
Well, why the fuck do we have tests then? What is a chromosome? What are genetics? What is it? Is it all, we're just going to give it all away for ideology? And what about women?
Yeah.
Like this idea of being completely progressive and looking at things and promoting equality, that's wonderful. But are you promoting equality for women? Like, what about the women? What about a woman like you? What about a woman who's slight and thin? What are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
How much do you weigh?
I'm not going to tell you.
You're very thin.
I'm thin, though.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's pretend you're in the 105-pound weight
Yeah.
class. Do you feel like you can compete with a 105-pound man?
No.
That seems
Yeah.
That seems ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? Well, it seems to me that we have to accept the fact that there's some physical differences when the consequences are being gravely injured. And this is what martial arts are all about. I'm trying to hurt you. And I shouldn't have natural physical advantages that come from having a Y chromosome and 30 plus years of testosterone in my body. That just seems to be obvious to me.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand why, but that was a hill that I was ready to die on. I was like, you guys can fuck off.
And good for you for that. But you see that they've kind of left you alone now, right?
Because I do this. Because I can say things like this about it. And because it makes sense.
Yeah.
And because when other people hear about it that are rational people, they go, what? What's happening? Wait a minute, that's a guy?
Yeah.
She was a guy for 30 years?
Yeah.
Like, that's not right. And the vast majority of people who even support trans rights, including friends of mine who are trans, were with me on this. They're like, yeah, that's crazy.
Have you heard the term TERF?
Am I surf and turf?
TERF, no.
No?
TERF as in TERF. It's
No.
trans exclusionary radical feminist. So this is a new slur that's being used against women who will say trans women are not women because they were not born women.
Whoa, trans exclusionary radical feminist.
So
That's
you would kind of be a TERF in this situation because you're advocating for women and the safety of women and saying that people who are born male but identify as female are not the same as people who are born female.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that I'm discriminatory.
No, but
See,
it's a word that they use to try and discredit you.
Good luck. Have fun with that. I don't care. See, this
No,
is
I
the
know.
problem. But the thing about this is I don't care because I really don't have any hate in my heart. And I don't have any discrimination in my heart. Like
I don't
have
think most of
nothing-
us do. Well, I
Right.
can't speak for everybody.
Some.
Some do, but
Some do, I'm sure. I'm sure if you were if you have 1,000 people and 100 of those people are a fucking asshole to you, it's going to feel like a lot of people, right? So if you're a trans person and I mean, I've seen horrific things written to trans people online. I've seen it. I've seen it. I understand there's real discrimination, but I understand that you have to understand, or you have to appreciate who your actual allies and people who are rational people who actually care about you, and who disagree with you on one very particular thing. And this is the only place where I disagree. It's combat sports. And it's because it's my area of expertise.
yeah.
I've been doing it since I was a kid. Like, you can't tell me that there's not differences. I've watched men and women fight my whole life. I know there's a difference. And I know from talking to endocrinologists and people who are experts in the human anatomy that there's just physiological differences that are insurmountable. They just are. I've seen men and women hit the bag. It's a very different thing.
Yeah. I mean, I get where people are coming from, the people who are upset by this, because I think by acknowledging that someone was not born the sex that they identify as, it's almost like pointing out to them that they're different.
But they are different.
Well, yeah.
They are different.
But I can see how that can be upsetting for someone who identifies as the opposite sex.
Yeah, you know what? I can see how it's upsetting if you're short and you want to identify as being tall. You know, what if I wanted to pretend that I was 7 feet tall? And you'd be like, Joe, you're 5'8". I'm like, are you an asshole? Why are you saying I'm a 5'8"? But you are. So if I say you're a trans woman, which means you're born a man, you have a Y chromosome. You're like, well, you're a piece of shit. How you pointing that out? Well, that's what you are.
Yeah.
It's not that you're negative. Are people who are dwarves? Is it evil to say that a dwarf is a dwarf or a little person or whatever phrase you want to use? Are we supposed to acknowledge that there's an issue? Like, if someone is born with a handicap, are you supposed to? Is that a fact? Are you allowed to discuss it as a fact? If you have autism, am I allowed to bring up the fact that you are on the spectrum, or am I supposed to ignore it?
Yeah.
Is it discrimination if you talk about reality? If someone has a deformity, are you allowed to discuss it? Or is it discrimination to discuss reality? Because what are we doing with our language? What are we doing with the way we describe the actual things that exist in the world? And if we're not describing them in accurate terms because we're trying to somehow or another stop people from getting hurt feelings, what are these feelings based on? These delusional perceptions of reality. And why are we reinforcing these delusional perceptions of reality? Because it seems to me that this kind of language and this kind of exclusionary, the inability to use certain words and the inability to describe things accurately, correctly, and in many cases scientifically, it hurts everybody.
Yeah. I agree with that. I don't think facts themselves are hateful. I think people who use facts to justify discrimination, that's where the problem is. And that's where the efforts should be going. Because when you start to deny facts, where does that leave you? Where do you draw the line in that case?
Absolutely. But I think there's something that's kind of cool about it, that there are trans people. And what's cool about it is that the world is weird, you know? And I'm not happy that they get a lot of hate, but I'm kind of happy that they exist. I wish they could just be women. I wish you could just like hit a switch and you really wish you were born a woman. Bam, you're a woman.
Yeah.
But I suspect that even if you could do that, some people would rather just be trans. Some people would like there's a lot of people that I know that are trans that also have dicks.
Yeah.
And they want to keep the dick.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, like what's going on here? And you know that you're transphobic if you're a straight heterosexual male and you're not willing to date a trans woman with a dick.
But you know what it is? It's actually a sexual preference for men who will date trans women who is retaining their penis. That's what it's called in the literature. If they decide not to get surgery, it's actually a particular sexual preference.
For the people that are attracted to that particular trans woman.
It's called gynandromorphophilia.
Whoa. Someone tell Jim Norton. Nothing wrong with that either.
No, nothing.
Yeah, nothing
I say
wrong with that
whatever,
either.
Do what you do it.
But this is the thing, the difference between a man and a woman, a trans man, a trans woman, and then someone who could actually be a woman who transitions. I think we're going to get to a point within, whether it's 100 years or 500 years, where we can use things like the future version of CRISPR or whatever comes down the line next, some scientific innovation that's going to allow people to literally transition.
Yeah.
I think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I suspect they're going to say that word again. What was the word?
Gynandromorphophilia.
It's going to be a bunch of those. It's going to be a bunch of people like, nah, I'd rather just stay a chick with a dick.
I'll take it. Yeah, well, gynandromorphophilia is the preference for male to female people who have retained their penis.
And fucking go for it.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong. It's all good. It's all good.
It's only when you tell other men that you have to conform to this, I think that's where the problem is. I think people should be allowed to be into what they're into.
Yes. And the idea that you're transphobic, and I've seen this, I've seen articles written where they're shitting on men that are not willing to date women with penises.
They call it the cotton ceiling is the other way around, when it's a male to female person and women don't want to date them. Lesbians don't want to date them because they have a penis.
What do they call it?
The cotton ceiling. Because it's like the glass ceiling, except it has to do with underwear.
Whoa. Jesus Christ. So lesbians who don't want to date trans women
because
that
they
still
have
have
penis.
penises.
Yeah.
What a wonderful world we live in. I like it. I like that this world is weird.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
See, this is where I think I get why people would see what I've said and think that it's transphobic. I get like who I am. I get that it's a problem. I get just looking at me as a problem. I mean, I'm a cage fighting commentator. I'm a dirty stand-up comedian. I seem like I would be your enemy.
But people shouldn't assume, right? Like you're your own person, so you might look a certain way.
Yeah, but that's just what people do. It's just the same way a guy looks at a chick with a dick and goes, yikes, what do we got going on here? I just think as me, as an individual, as a human being, one thing I like about it is I like things that are weird. I like things that defy the standard definitions.
I'm the same.
I think it's
I think
good.
it's more interesting.
It's far more interesting. Yeah. It's far more interesting when you talk to a neuroscientist who wears a Playboy t-shirt, right? You're a weirdo.
Yeah. Do you like it?
Yeah, it's cool.
It's a cool
But
cover.
You're a weirdo.
I am a weirdo.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you find that relates to your sense of humor too, though? Because my sense of humor is really dry. And I feel that's part of, the way I look at the world and why I appreciate the world the way it is.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I embrace the weirdness. I really do. I love it. I love that things are strange. I do. I think it's interesting. I really do. I think so. I think everything's interesting. I mean, I try to cultivate that. I really do. I go out of my way to try to look at things with fresh eyes And especially because I smoke a lot of pot. And so whenever I do that, I kind of always have a new way of looking at it, like, oh, I never even thought about it that way. But that's one of the things that I really like about marijuana. And I've tried to explain that to people that don't smoke pot. I got a conversation with Ted Nugent about that. And one of the things, because he had this perception that people smoke pot are lazy and they're ne'er-do-wells. I'm like, dude, I can't have enough jobs. I have so many. I do so many fucking
You're
things.
super high functioning.
I'm always doing something. I'm not lazy. But I get the benefit that I get out of it is a benefit that is not often. It's not often promoted, and that benefit is. There's something good about being nervous. There's something good about what people call paranoia. There's something good about heightened perspective that is brought upon by psychedelics or by marijuana, where you are forced to re-examine what you've taken for granted. And that's what I like about it. And so one of the things that I like about smoking pot, besides the fact that I believe it makes me more compassionate, it instills a better sense of community, it makes me more friendly and more loving, and it definitely does that. But it also makes me look at things with fresh eyes and appreciate the weirdness. The weird, like, I genuinely love it when I see, like, some girl, like, do you know who Bailey J is?
Yeah.
Trans woman
Yes.
with a giant dick. She's got pictures of her dick. Like, I
Jamie
love it.
Is Jamie gonna pull one up right now?
I don't think you can. We'll get kicked off of YouTube. But I love it. I like the fact that it's real. Doesn't
Yeah.
bother me.
Yeah.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
I think it's fun.
Are you gynandromorphophilic?
No.
Okay.
No, I'm not. But I like the fact that they exist.
Yeah.
I do.
That's acceptance.
And I like the fact that people like them. And I like the fact that it makes certain people happy. That if it makes them happy or people that are attracted to them happy, I really do like it. I don't like definitions. I don't like restrictions, you know? So where people would get an incorrect assumption is my radical stance against this trans woman fighting other women, because I recognize that as being unfair. And not...
Well, because there's suppression of the debate as well.
Yes.
It's one thing if you talk about it openly.
Well, it's also something that I'm an expert in. So I'm like, stop. Don't try to compare this to fucking tennis.
Yeah.
Because even in tennis, it wasn't fair.
Yeah.
But this is a different thing. It's a radically different thing.
It's interesting because I heard you talk about this. I don't know if it was your interview with Josh Barnett, but when you first get into the cage, you don't know what the other person's going to be like until you start fighting. And I just imagine if you go in and you don't know that someone was born male, how that's a very big disadvantage.
I think there's a propensity for violence that exists in the mind of a man that I just don't know if it's the same in most women. I just think, I don't know how much of that, like, I don't know if you turn me into a woman, how much of that you would squeeze out. I don't know. But I know there's a switch that men have, because I've seen it go off. I've probably seen more people get fucked up in real life than 99.9% of people that have ever lived, other than, like, you know, people lived in Roman times and shit. Watch people get chopped up by swords. But people in modern time, like in terms of like fisticuffs, people getting head kicked and beaten down with elbows, I've probably seen more of that than almost anyone that's ever lived. There's like probably a small group of people, like 1,000 people on the planet that have seen as many people get fucked up personally as I have. So you date a chunk. You get a sense of what you're seeing. You get a sense of, and you understand there's a technical violence that women are capable of, for sure. I mean, especially like extreme examples like Chris Cyborg, who's like super violent.
Yeah.
Or when Holly Holm head kicked Ronda Rousey and then hammer fisted her while she was unconscious. Super violent, but also a technical violence. And then there's an extreme over-the-top masculine violence that I've seen that's even more ferocious. There's something to it that it's another level. And this is not saying that men are better than women. This is just, I'm saying there's a thing that men do. There's a reason why men cause all wars. Men cause all wars. Women aren't fucking suiting up and going into battle and trying to conquer as a giant, million strong group of women soldiers invading a foreign army. No, this is not happening. This is a male behavior.
It's testosterone.
It is. And it's also, there's something about males, this switch, this violent switch that exists. And it exists in a very dark way. Women are capable of shooting people and stabbing people and doing all these things. Don't get me wrong. Not saying that. But it does not happen in the same numbers that it happens with men. It just doesn't. And I think that this is something that also has to be taken into consideration when you're talking about men versus women. Like it's a different thing. And people who don't think it's a different thing have probably never been punched in the face by a guy.
Yeah.
Or seen guys punch guys in the face or been around it enough where you realize like it's a different thing. I've seen some awesome women fights. Amazing, super technical, even very violent. But goddamn, there's a difference. It's just not the same thing.
Yeah. No, I would definitely agree with that.
And most people would. But if in today's climate, in certain circles, that would be considered transphobic or maybe even sexist.
Well, there's also this narrative that women, because they need to be like men, on some level, women have to be as strong as men. And I've seen this where they will publish pieces saying women are as strong as men.
Get out of here with
physically strong
But
as
that's
men.
not even true.
It's not true.
Well, it's not only is it not true, it's you can demonstrate it. Like scientifically, it's not true. You look at the data in terms of what men have lifted, what they can do. Like this woman who used to be a man who's now competing in weightlifting in Australia. Like everybody's going crazy over this one. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense that they're allowing this. Like this is so nonsensical. If you want to have the transgender Olympics, go for it. Do that. But to try to pretend until we come up with some sort of a way, like with CRISPR or whatever we talked about before, where you can actually turn a man into a woman, turn a woman into a man, until it's like real clean. We look at it, we go, yep, we just did the chromosome test. You've got a Y chromosome now, and you've erased 30 years of testosterone, and a man now is built like you, right?
Yeah.
Then we're good. Now
Then
it's an
fair.
actual woman. Yeah. Until then, man, you're dealing with some hardcore variables. And to be in denial of those variables is silly. And I'm gonna stand against it every time because I think I see what it is. I mean, it's like a religious ideology.
Yeah.
You're purposely ignoring facts.
Do you feel like most people in the industry agree with you, or how do they feel about it?
Oh yeah. Oh fuck yeah. Oh yeah, the people who don't is a minor group, and they're all like super progressive, left wing, left leaning, and some of them were scared to talk about it.
I was gonna say because other people aren't as vocal.
Well, they just didn't want to get the blowback. That's all it is. But in terms of like fighters, it was like 100%. I mean, Ashley Evans Smith is a fucking beast for taking that fight, and even tougher for winning. But then again, she went into the UFC. She's a UFC level fighter.
Yeah.
Which is there's a big difference, and what she was. I mean, if you look at like the caliber of competition that she's fought, guys like Raquel Pennington, or girls, excuse me, like Raquel Pennington. Sorry, Raquel. And look at who Fallon Fox was fighting when she was fighting, lower level competition. That's a giant leap between Raquel Pennington and someone who is on these amateur circuits. And Raquel Pennington beat Ashley Evans Smith. Crazy fight. Submitted her with a bulldog choke with like 1 second to go. We're screaming. It was nuts. Covered in blood. It was fucking chaos, right? But this is like super elite world championship level fighting. That's the difference.
It's different, yeah.
Yeah, it's just fucking different. Yeah, so there was a lot of people that supported me, but I knew I was right. I was
that other people are secretly agreeing with you.
Not even secretly. They just didn't want to talk about it publicly.
Yeah.
It wasn't that it was a secret. There was no people that were coming up to me disagreeing with me. Trans people were agreeing with me. Trans people that I'm friends with were like, that shit is crazy. That bitch is out of her fucking mind. It was funny. And also, in the long run, over many, many conversations about it, people realize, okay, I see your perspective. Like, you're not
hateful,
discriminatory.
bigot.
No, it's just about combat sports and even about weightlifting. It's like, come on, man. Imagine if you were a woman and all your life you've been fucking power cleaning through the force of will and determination and your focus and discipline. And then some trans woman comes in and just, this bitch is lifting 100 pounds more than you're ever going to lift.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, what the fuck? This isn't fair.
Yeah.
You know, like those poor girls in Texas that had to wrestle that girl because they're discriminatory in the opposite way, and they won't recognize that this trans girl is a boy or this trans boy is a boy.
And they can get injured too.
Fuck yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's literally you're allowing a girl to take steroids. That's what you're doing. You're saying one girl can take steroids because she thinks she's a boy, and we don't think she's a boy, so we'll let her take steroids. It's like, ugh. Why are you letting her take steroids? Why are you letting her take testosterone?
Do you know how old that girl was? Or
I believe
that
17.
Trans boy? Okay.
She won the states 2 years in a row.
Whoa.
Shocker.
But you know, by taking testosterone too, he is sterilizing himself.
Yeah.
Which is crazy at that age.
Yeah.
Not to say specifically of that person, but just in general.
Well, as a neuroscientist and your understanding of the frontal lobe and the development of you realize like your decision-making capability is not fully formed.
Not till you're almost 30. So
that's when people should vote.
That's when they should make any sort of important decision. But it's crazy because do you think a 17-year-old or even like even 21-year-old can decide if they want to be sterile for life?
No. If you gave me a chance at 17 to get a vasectomy, I might have done it. You know, now I'm happy I have kids, but it's an irreversible decision, which is why it gets weird, right? It's like if you decide to sterilize yourself with testosterone, is there any coming back from that? If you start taking estrogen again, will your cycle kick back in?
No. Well, once you start taking cross-sex hormones, no.
No.
And it's amazing because parents are saying, well, you know, if that's the decision they want to make, then they should make that decision, and they're okay with it.
What's interesting, too, is the language that we use and that people use in the media now. Like there was a story about a woman who just gave birth.
Oh, tell me more, actually, because I thought I was thinking of something, but I think it's something else.
She used to be a woman. She was transitioning to being a man, and she got pregnant.
Okay.
But became a full man after she gave birth, had her breasts removed, the whole deal.
Right. And it was celebrated.
Now has a kid. Yeah, it was celebrated.
As this man gave birth, but it was...
Well, not only that, I don't think she breastfed, which shouldn't be celebrated. Like there's massive amounts of evidence that breastfeeding is super positive. Look at that. Look at that. Full beard, holding a baby. So clearly taking the testosterone again, if not taking it while the baby was in the womb. And I'm sure... 5 years after having a child as a woman. What? Transgender man gives birth to baby 5 years after having a child as a woman. Okay. So she had a child as a woman, and then she got pregnant again as a man. That's what they're saying. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
What does that mean? What's going on there? Imagine if you were an alien.
So I guess it isn't impossible to get pregnant, but if you're, straight from pubertal blockers straight onto cross-sex hormones, your body hasn't even really developed. So in that case...
So as a grown-up, it's less likely that you become sterile? Is that the case?
I think it depends on how long... I'm not an endocrinologist, but I think it has to do with how long you've been on the hormones and probably how old you were when you started.
Right.
But in this case, I mean, I've seen cases too where trans women will breastfeed, and the doctors say this is an amazing thing, but they're taking hormones. So basically those hormones are going to the baby when they're breastfeeding.
Boy.
I even feel bad saying...
That seems like child endangerment.
I know, I feel bad saying this right now, but...
Why?
It feels like I'm placing judgment, I guess, on people.
You should be placing judgment. Well, you were talking about something that's publicly projected.
Well,
this is something that's in the news. They chose to make this. They chose to be there where their cameras were taking pictures of them. They're proclaiming this.
That the other side isn't being presented, too. I think that's part of the problem.
What's the other side?
Well, the things that we're saying.
Yes. Well, this is what... So what are the other side? What is the other side?
Well, the one side being that it's progressive, and if you identify as a woman and you have a child, then you should, raise that child as if no different from any other woman.
But she doesn't identify as a woman. She identifies as a man.
So not this person, the person I was talking about who was breastfeeding male to female.
You can breastfeed male to female? Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Wait a minute. But that's not his kid or her kid. Oh boy, we need new words. This is why those gender pronouns, Jordan Peterson was wrong. This is why we need all these separate gender pronouns.
All 72 of them.
Well, here's the other thing. This male, transgender male, obviously still likes dudes.
The one we just saw?
Yeah, because he got pregnant by a guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so...
Stay a chick, bro. I don't know what to tell you. Do whatever you want to do. But, we should probably take into consideration the idea that maybe this isn't the best thing for that child to be subjected to hormones.
No, that's the bottom line. I think whether a parent is trans or not doesn't have a bearing on their ability to parent.
So while that trans man was pregnant, did he continue his testosterone therapy is the question.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's the question.
Woo!
That's what I pulled up. This one says no. That's how they got pregnant.
Oh, so they backed off to have a baby on purpose.
No, they got off the testosterone for health reasons and then got pregnant.
Oh.
That's this particular case.
Health reasons.
Yeah.
But I thought it was natural and awesome.
It's good for you.
That's the other thing too, right? If it is natural, why do you have to have synthetic hormones injected into your body that are not endogenous? Like they're not even supposed to be in your body. This is so crazy. We live in such a bizarro world. Seeing a guy with a beard who's fully pregnant with a hairy chest is so fucking odd. I'd assume he has a hairy chest.
But it's also, it goes against people who say that gender's a social construct. Why do you need to take testosterone then to be the opposite sex?
Well, this is one of the weirder things of the argument that I had about with one person online, where they said about Fallon Fox. They said she's always been a woman, and I said even when she was having sex with a woman and got her pregnant, and she said yes, even then. I'm like, we're done. We're done here. We can't. We're in make-believe land now.
Yeah.
Well, what does that mean? You were a woman when you were having sex with a woman. So why not just stay that woman who has sex with women?
I think it's because people want to have sympathy, right? And so it's kind of like that's a nice story to tell.
Yes, but it's
even
not.
If it's not true.
But that's the problem, is that you're not dealing with reality. You're into this weird fantasy land that opens you up to massive amounts of criticism from people that might be discriminatory. Instead of saying, yeah, this is problematic and weird and strange, and the whole thing is weird. Instead of saying that, saying, no, she's always been a woman. Well, the fuck does that mean?
Because it's such a blanket statement, too.
Right. But it's a wonderful thing to do to shut down all rational critique of this situation. It's a wonderful way to do it. She's always been a woman. Like, really?
Well, that's the only way they can win, too, though, because if you actually enter into a conversation, you have to actually think about your position and actually think of ways to argue with the other person, and that takes effort.
Yes.
So it's a lot easier just to simply say they're wrong, and you can't argue with someone's lived experience.
It doesn't just take effort at all. It's also an acknowledgement of the oddity of this situation. Like you have to take into account. Like if you're not committed to one side or the other, and you're looking at it for what it really is, you really have to go, wow, it's so strange. Like be open-minded, be accepting, be completely embracing of all oddities, all strange different variables of the broad spectrum of human sexuality. Be open to all of it.
Yeah.
But also be aware of how fucking weird it is. Because it is weird. It's not, you don't have to have hate in your heart to recognize that it's strange to see a guy with a beard breastfeeding.
Right, yeah.
Or fully pregnant. It's fucking strange.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is.
But I think if you're a curious person too, you want to learn more and you want to ask questions. But like in the climate now, you can't even do that, even if your heart is in a good place.
Yeah. But it's hard for people to know that your heart is in a good place. It's just part of the problem. When, you don't fall in line with the accepted narrative, people think, well, it must be because you're conservative or you're transphobic or homophobic or something wrong where you're not on board with the way people are thinking today. You're stuck in the past.
Yeah.
And it's it's
on the wrong side of history.
That's a good one. But it's just, it's hard to fully express your feelings on nuanced issues.
Yeah. Well, it takes effort, right? It takes time,
Yes.
and you have to actually think about what is your position, and you actually have to look at the facts and then have a nuanced position. Because I don't think most of these issues, you can't just simply go with one side or the other across the board, or simply go with what sounds nice. There's usually a lot of other stuff underlying that needs to kind of be hashed out.
What is your transition into academia, from academia to the, doing what you do now, and being able to write things and do podcasts and be free of that sort of, what has that been like?
The process, or what led me to do it?
Both. The process, you described what led you to do it.
Okay. So I just finished my PhD last year. In the last 2 years, I realized that academia had changed a lot. So when I first...
In 2 years?
And I would say in the 4 years I did my PhD, it changed a lot. So when I started, there were certain topics that were a little taboo, but you could still ask questions. And I had planned to stay in academia and continue being a sex researcher. I love sex research. But I realized as time went on that you couldn't ask important questions anymore, and especially when it comes to gender, sex differences, and gender dysphoria. So at the time, with regards to the debate on kids with gender dysphoria, every single mainstream news piece in left-leaning outlets was saying young kids should transition. That's the best thing for them. And so you'd see all this coverage of young kids who had transitioned to the opposite sex, and their parents were, elated. The kids were, doing so well, apparently. But from a scientific perspective, that's not what the research shows. As I said, most kids will outgrow their feelings, so it's best to just wait and see. And so I wrote an op-ed about that. And at the time, I wrote it and I sat on it for probably about 6 months trying to decide whether I should really try and get it published, because I knew that people were going to be really upset, even though I was just talking about the scientific literature. And I asked my colleagues, what do you think? And they said to me, I said, should I wait until I have tenure to publish this? And they said, even if you have tenure, it's not going to protect you nowadays. So, I was lucky. My mentors have always been very supportive of looking at facts and looking at the truth, and don't worry about whether it's politically incorrect or not. Just say, when you do a study, just present what you found. Don't worry about how people are going to take it. But not everyone is like that, and especially even in the hard sciences now. If you publish, it won't even get published now if you find things that are controversial, because journals don't want to have to deal with that. The institutions don't want to have to deal with that. So I made the decision to publish that op-ed, and then from there I said, well, I'm going to see where this journalism thing can take me. And so now I say whatever I want.
But that sort of behavior and that thought process is such, on their side, is such a weakening of the foundation of critical thinking. Mm-hmm. And it also comes at the same time as these platforms like podcasting and YouTube that allows a person like you or like Jordan Peterson to now disconnect and have a far larger audience.
Although it is scary, there is quite a bit of censorship going on with some of those platforms.
With YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah. YouTube likes to. They have the cute thing they do. They demonetize things. They'll probably demonetize this podcast for sure.
Yeah.
Right.
If they even let you upload it after.
Oh, they'll let us upload it.
Okay.
But the demonetization, especially since you criticize YouTube, as soon as you criticize
Sorry,
YouTube, that's like one of the
YouTube.
best ways
Yeah.
to get demonetized from
Yeah.
one of their videos
Sorry,
is to
Susan.
criticize them. Yeah, it's fucking squirrely.
They also make people, like, if you're subscribed, they don't tell people when videos get posted. Something like that, right?
They do some weird shit. I don't pay attention. Just I upload it and keep moving. But I have friends who that's their main source of income was YouTube and videos and advertising. And for them was a disaster. Like people that were making a lot of money, and then all of a sudden that money was cut down to 30% of what it used to be. And with no clear guidelines. The problem with the guidelines is, even if you say if we have a video and they just decide that they don't like the video, you can't really protest it. You can protest it, but then they review it and then they uphold their initial ruling and they don't tell you why.
Yeah.
They don't say, well, hey, you called someone a queer or you did this or no. They just say, yeah, this is how it is. And it's
scary.
Subjective.
Yeah.
Well, it's the problem with being a monopoly. And they're not a monopoly in the fact that there's not other video platforms, but they are certainly the largest by far.
Yeah.
in terms of like user uploaded video platforms, it's not even a close second, which is kind of weird. It's amazing that they've done it. You know, I mean, there's nothing remotely like it. And I know a bunch of people thought about building one, and I've been contacted by people that are starting up a new one. They want me to join that. I'm like, good luck. I mean, good luck. I mean, YouTube's so far ahead.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you catch up to them?
Yeah.
And I don't think they're evil by any stretch of the imagination. And I had a conversation with someone about it pretty recently where she was describing that they're using crude tools. And this is part of the problem with what is being deemed as censorship is really they're trying to root out hate speech, and they're doing so with crude tools that will eventually, through AI, get better. And
is that it though, or is it that they're trying to shut down any sort of dissenting points of view?
I don't know. I think they definitely lean hard left. They definitely do. So does Google. They lean hard left. That was proven by the Demore paper and how it was received, the Demore memo.
Actually, you know what? Because I was doing YouTube for a bit and then I stopped just because I unfortunately didn't have time because my writing is like my number one thing. But I had one video that the minute it went up, I was talking about science on gender dysphoria. It got demonetized, literally 20 minutes. And I thought, I know what my intentions are, and it's really unsettling when that happens.
It should be, because you're not doing anything hateful.
No. And
what they're doing is they're trying to make subjects much less attractive to discuss. And who's doing it? I mean, is it doing it through crude tools, or is someone looking at it and flagging it and deciding that this is not something that they want to be involved with advertising? And in their defense, a lot of this got started off by people that were really doing fucked up things on YouTube, and they had to respond, and they had to figure out a way to eliminate that stuff from their platform. And I think once you start censoring, the tendency is to continue and to expand. The tendency is not to back off of that censorship. You're like, you know what? We're just going to allow Holocaust deniers and racists and make your videos. Hey, this is YouTube. This is the Wild West, baby.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that because they have advertisers, and there's a significant amount of revenue that they get from that.
But they don't actually end the conversation, though, because people just get upset and they take the they may not be on YouTube, but the people are still talking about these things.
Yeah, but they're not on YouTube. As long as they're not on YouTube, they don't give a shit. Like, yeah, you're not on YouTube. Good luck with that conversation on Vimeo, or wherever you're gonna go. It's it's odd, but it's also I love it. I love that there's these part of me even likes the fact that things are being censored. I really do.
Really?
Yeah, I find it fascinating.
Oh, I don't.
I feel like the argument is fascinating because I think, first of all, I think censorship clearly causes. I think when you push against something, there's a natural reaction. That reaction is to bolster your defenses and fire back up. And I think there's certainly some of that going on. You can't really quiet ideas entirely, but you do expose your intentions, and you expose these blind spots that are what we've been discussing all day. There's these political ideology blind spots that people have, these ideological holes that they have in the way they look at things.
Well, I think the question is, do you want to solve the problem, or are you trying to just be successful as a business? If you want to solve the problem, I don't think suppressing speech and shutting down people who are genuinely just trying to ask questions and have conversations, I don't think that's going to solve things.
I don't think they're trying to solve any problems. I think they're trying to make a ton of money, and they're also very liberal, and they think the right thing to do is to suppress certain ideologies they deem harmful or hate speech. I had a conversation with a woman who's a YouTube exec. She was telling me that Douglas Murray and Sam Harris, they had this podcast that they did online, and some guy put it up in his playlist, and he got a community guideline strike for having it in his playlist.
Wow.
And I said, how is that? And she said, it's hate speech. I said, it's
not hate speech. I heard that podcast.
Yeah. And not only is it not hate speech, you didn't watch it. She didn't listen to it. Like, she had no idea what the fuck it was. But she just like confidently said it to me like I was going to just shut up. I'm like, you're out of your fucking mind. You don't even know what you're talking about. This is hilarious. But it was a person out of pretty high level over there.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that. Like, okay, well, this is the kind of a lack of critical thinking that we're discussing. This is the kind of blind spot that we're discussing, that you feel like you could just say that instead of appreciate that this is two intellectuals discussing something that's very complex, and that it was about immigration and about Islam, and those are two things that people don't want to hear. You know, they just like go, those two things are off limits.
Yeah.
Unless you're pro-Islam or pro-immigration, you better shut the fuck up or we're going to demonetize you. And that kind of censorship is fascinating to me because it's not effective. It just makes people go, hey, and you know, and then it makes the people on the YouTube side get defensive, and it makes them double down, and you know, and you're seeing
It makes
that.
things worse.
Yeah, you see that now. I mean, you see it with many people. It's a weird time for ideas.
Yeah. How do you feel about being part of the IDW?
The International Dork Web. I'm the least mentioned, happily the least mentioned person in that group. I'm very happy about that. I don't like being in any groups. What did Groucho Marx once say? I don't want to be a part of any club that would have me. It's just, look, I'm very happy to be able to have a platform where I can have people like you on, or any of those people, whether it's Brett Weinstein or Eric Weinstein. Sorry, guys. Brett Weinstein, Eric. They got, after Harvey, everybody got real
Yeah. I've spoken to Brett. He's really sweet.
He's great.
Yeah.
And his wife, Heather, is amazing as well.
He'll be on actually the next season of Wrongspeak.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Heather Heying, his wife, is amazing too.
She is, yeah.
And they were on together. And Sam Harris is a good friend, and I love that guy. And he's a fascinating person, and as is Jordan. And look, I don't agree with a lot of what Ben Shapiro says, but he's a super nice guy, and I really like him. You know, and that's you saw that thing that happened with that actor, Mark, was his name? Mark Duplass, is that his name? Got in trouble for tweeting that you know,
Oh,
Ben
I
is
saw
a
that, yeah.
very nice
reaching
and
across
reasonable
the
person.
aisle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a fun time.
Ben is really nice too.
He's a really nice guy. You know, I like him a lot. This internet, whatever it is, the dark web thing, that's all Eric. Eric Weinstein's idea was
Yeah.
to name this and label it. He loves all that shit. He loves all that cloak and dagger stuff. He gets a kick out of it, but he makes some very good points, and he's a brilliant, brilliant guy.
He is.
And this idea that we're all joined together. I mean, we all went out, we had a big dinner together, like a bunch of dorks, and we all got together and we're like this little club. You know, it's kind of fun, and we're going to do it again. And we're bringing more people in too. We're bringing more people into the dork web.
Good.
And some people are resentful that they're not a part of the dork web. I'll tell you some names afterwards, but some people like contacted Barry Weiss and were upset that they weren't included in the dork web.
I loved Barry's column.
It was interesting.
Yeah.
It's the whole, but the label of it all. I mean, what's interesting is it starts this conversation, right? As to why is it even necessary to have this dark web, and what's the function of this dark web, and what is the dark web doing really? Like what is, you know? And there was an article today where someone was calling it problematic and saying that it's mostly right-leaning people, which is absolutely not true. Sam Harris, very left. Brett Weinstein, fiercely progressive. Eric, very left. I'm way more left than I am right. The very few right-wing ideas that I hold on to, they're very small. The vast majority of my positions on things side with people on the left. Vast majority. Ben Shapiro's very right, but he's reasonable, you know, and he's also a young guy, you know, conservative, religious. But he's also extremely intelligent and reasonable when you talk to him. And he has himself disavowed some of the things that he said, and he's himself criticized his own words that he wrote a whole column. Here's a list of all the stupid things I've ever said online. You know, and because he's you know, he's a very aware guy, very self-aware. I think it's important to have discussions. And I think it's important that when people feel like those discussions are being suppressed, that they talk about that. And I think that's what this whole thing is.
Yeah.
And I think you're a part of that as well.
I was in the column, yeah.
We could use you in the dork web.
Okay.
We need a woman of color.
You do, to
We
prove
do.
that you guys aren't all racists.
Yeah, I know. It's too much white people. God damn it. I took 23andMe, and I'm hoping I got some black in me.
Yeah.
I'm praying.
I'm hoping for you too.
Just give me some. Give me more than 5%. What is it that you have to have? I think you only have to have like 1/16th Native American to catch a check in some places.
I'm not sure what it is in Canada, but something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you go fishing in Canada and you're First Nation, if you have, I don't know what the number is, but you could bring as many fish as you want. But like if you, like I was fishing in Canada in a place where I could only get one walleye a day.
Mm-hmm.
Could only get one. But there was some dude next to me who was First Nations. Homeboy was just pulling them in left and right and sticking them in a bucket, cleaning up.
So you better be hoping on that test then.
I'm hoping and praying. I just want to be discriminated against.
1/16th is one great-great-grandparent.
Oh,
So that's all you need.
that's all I need. Somebody, come on.
Didn't you
7.
say you have chimp in your family too?
Oh, for sure. Somebody fucked a chimp. This is what I think. I think if people evolved from lower hominids, right? If that's what happened, if you believe all that evolution
Yeah,
nonsense.
nonsense. No one
Yeah.
believes that anymore. It's pseudoscience.
Yeah, it's a bunch of pseudoscience. But I think that somewhere in my ancestry, somebody went back in for one more shot at a chimp when they probably shouldn't have. Somebody said, who's going to know? They probably got drunk.
Yeah. No
Yeah.
judgment. Yeah.
No judgment. Yeah. And clearly evolution is not, it's not a fucking straight, flat plane, right? It varies.
Yeah.
Has
But
to.
but you can't deny the influence of it. You know, as some people do.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. What do you think about all this dork web stuff?
I felt, I mean, the fact that the New York Times covered it gave me a sense of relief, because sometimes the things I write, I don't feel like the things I write are that controversial or that offensive, but the response I get sometimes I'm surprised
And
by.
you say this as
As a journalist.
a journalist
Yes, a
and
science
as
journalist.
an intellectual, as a person
yeah.
who actually understands what you're talking about.
Yeah, especially someone who has studied, especially these certain topics within research. I think I know what I'm talking about. And so when people get really mad, it makes you question, where are we going? So the fact that, you know, Barry covered this and that the response was so positive. I mean, people got mad too.
Oh, people got mad at her. She's taking a lot of heat.
Yeah, definitely.
A lot.
Yeah. But I feel a little bit more optimistic, because it tells me that people get it, that we have conversations like this and people don't think that we're bigoted or that we're coming from, we have a nefarious agenda.
Right.
We just want to have conversations and talk about things that aren't being discussed in the mainstream.
Yeah, that's where censorship becomes very dangerous, if you do silence a lot of these conversations. And right now they're not being silenced, even though they're being demonetized to a certain extent. That is a problem, but the conversations still exist. And as long as they do still exist, and the vast majority exist in the audio form anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And podcasting is the vast majority of the volume of people that are downloading these kind of conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an incredibly unique time for the distribution of ideas. I don't think there's ever been anything remotely like this in human history.
Mm.
There's never been a time where someone like me can just do something just on a laptop with a webcam, and then 9 years later, it's this.
Mm-hmm.
You know, where
It's
it
wild.
gets fucking nuts. I'm aware of it, but I don't even think about it that much. Honestly, I just do it. I mean, I was excited to talk to you today. I was looking forward to it.
I was excited too.
Yay, we did it. But I don't give it much consideration as far as the impact, because I think as soon as you do that, it'll slip through your fingers.
Like if you think too much about it.
Yeah. Well, I definitely wouldn't say half the shit I've already said today, right? That's the appeal, though.
Yeah.
The appeal is that you and I really believe this. If there was no microphone, we probably would never have this conversation, because it's too difficult. Just sit. It would be too weird. Like, you and I are just going to sit down and just talk to
Like
each other.
if I just came in and met you and we sat
Yeah.
down. Yeah.
Would
Yeah.
be weird. Like, you almost have to have this where people can see it to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because otherwise you'd check your phone, I'd check my phone, get up and go to the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it would be a normal thing to do. But by putting these headphones on and by having this microphone in front of our face, we lock in.
And know that how many million people are going to be watching it.
Fuckload. And it's more every week. It's growing in a weird way, like a fucking mold.
It's amazing.
It's strange. But this is the only way we would have this conversation. And it's made me far better at talking to people and understanding conversations and understanding what they are. And also examining my own speech patterns and the way I communicate and getting better at it.
I like how you said you started it just because you wanted to talk to people. Like, I think that's what it should be. It should just be that interest in having a conversation. And
I used to like doing radio when I was a guest, you know, on certain radio shows, you know, like you do like, if I was going to say I'd go to, you know, Phoenix or something like that, and I would go do stand-up there, I would have to promote it on the radio in the old days. And I would get there, and I would get there early and, you know, smoke a joint beforehand, drink a cup of coffee, get in and start talking shit and having a good time and laughing. I'd be like, that'd be fun to have a radio show, man. You know, just go in there and just talk and have fun. But the problem was, to me, it was like always the censorship. I was like, oh, you got to censor yourself. Then I started doing the Opie and Anthony show. And Opie and Anthony had a show on, you know, it was XM, then it became Sirius, and then they split up. But when I would do that, it was Opie and Anthony and Jim Norton. I was like, this is the best. This is so fun. And the way they did it, credit to them, the way they did it was different than any radio show I'd ever been a part of, because there was no structure at all. They would just bring comics in. It would just be me and Ari Shaffir and Bill Burr and Joey Diaz and all these guys. They would just come in and hang out and talk shit. There was no structure at all. It was just Anthony is such a smart and funny guy, and Opie would sort of run the thing, and Jim was there, and they would just let everybody talk. And I'd be like, this would be amazing. You could just come in and hang out and have fun. And then I started doing a podcast after that. But it was because of that. And then Anthony did a thing called Live from the Compound. He calls his house The Compound. And he did like this thing in his basement where he had a green screen, and he did his own show, and he did karaoke while he was holding a machine gun. He's fucking crazy. You know, Anthony's like a legit gun nut. But he had a studio that he built in his basement, like with like legitimate equipment. And I went, oh, and that inspired me. And that is literally what started me off to do a podcast, is seeing that he had set this up in his basement. And I was like, well, just start doing it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing I feel with Wrongspeak. The fact that I can see people being mobbed and I can think, okay, I wonder what they're like. And I can just ask them.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
Like, is that what it's like for you? You see someone, you think, I just want to talk to them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, especially someone in a controversial position like Jordan. Like when I first met Jordan, it's like when he was just starting to get some attention online. And I wanted to talk to him. I was like, well, what is going on here? And why is everybody so upset at you? And I've never met anyone in all of my life who is so purposely misrepresented by other people than Jordan.
Yeah.
I've never seen it before. It's amazing to see intelligent, articulate people clearly lying about his positions and about how not even understanding that by doing that they're strengthening him.
Yeah.
And they're strengthening you're not going to lie to the point where people are going to really think that your position is correct, and all these things that Jordan has said, that somehow or another you misheard them or the whole world misheard them. No, you're misrepresenting his positions, and that just makes all the people that are siding with him realize he's right.
Yeah.
It strengthens him. They literally don't understand that they are his publicists. They are helping. They are proving his point. And to the point where he's selling out. He sold out gigantic 5,000 seat theaters.
Yeah.
He's selling them out all over the world, just talking.
It's crazy.
He's making millions of dollars because of them being stupid. It's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
It's really amazing. And all of it came out of him putting his foot down in opposition to the very same things that you experienced that forced you to leave academia. This misrepresenting of reality that seems to be going, and I think it's fueling it's certainly fueling the dork web, but on top of that,
because people are seeing that they can't trust what they're being told.
Yeah, they are. They can't trust what they're being told, and they understand that there's other conversations to be had out there. There was an article that I tweeted today that was really interesting. I was like, wow, this is crazy. It was talking about long-form podcasts and the ability that long-form podcasts have to allow people to have rational civil discourse. Instead of just like getting on these fucking CNN shows and yelling at each other for 3 minutes.
Or sometimes you'll get a panel where everyone just agrees with each other.
Yes. Yeah. Or the panels are crazy too. How the fuck are you going to have 9 people talking at the same time? That is crazy. It's hard to do when I do podcasts with 2 other people. It's hard.
Well, it's entertainment.
But it's not a good way to discuss topics. You know, long form conversations are really the only way where you can get a good sense of where someone stands on a position and how they think. You know, like I get a chance to see and a lot of people are going to get a chance to see you today, how you think about things and what your thought process is. And if there's holes in that thought process, they get exposed.
Yeah. And that's, I think, also with issues that are more complex, you can talk about all the different nuances to that issue. Because like if you just simply have your talking points and you if you do like a standard interview that's say 7 minutes long, it's going to be very, very sparse in terms of what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a single thing we discussed today that wasn't 15 minutes long, at least. Right?
Yeah, and you can't really condense that. I mean, you could condense it down, but you lose a lot of the information.
And also you feel like you didn't do it justice. Like I can't do those panel shows because I feel like there's no way I'm going to be able to do anything justice. There's no room, especially now.
Well, people play it up too. They know that they're there for the entertainment value, so it's more about being upset at what someone's saying than having some real understanding. Right.
It's also about barking out your talking points in as like ferocious a manner as you can, so you can appear that you're winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're a nice guy too, though. You know, you're not going to come and attack somebody.
I definitely don't want to do that. When I have people on, even someone that I think I'm going to disagree with, I want to see how they think. And some people get mad. They go, "Oh, dude, you know, you morph your opinions based on whoever's on the show." That's not what I do. But what I do is I let people talk. And I try to see their point of view, and I try to expand their point of view. So if they say something, I go, "Oh, so what it is that this," and I want them to keep going. I want to see the landscape of their thought process. I don't want to see a tiny garden. I don't want to see a little potted plant. I want to see the whole thing. I want to get a sense of why do I disagree with them? What am I fucked up? Maybe it's me. You know, maybe it's them.
But that's how it should be, too. I don't think people should be stuck in their opinion. Even no matter how right you think you are, I think you should always be open to changing your mind.
I think so, too. But I think that's one of the rarest qualities when it comes to discourse is the ability that people have to abandon ideas that they've supported in the past.
Because what does that mean then if you're on one side and everyone in your life thinks this way? What does it mean if you don't think that way?
Yeah. Well, what are the ideas you? Or are you, and the ideas are just things that you're examining. Yeah. That's what it should be. But for most people, including me, most of my life, that was not the case. If I had an idea and if I supported that idea, I'll fucking fight you. Yeah. This I'm right and you're wrong, and
so what changed then?
Doing this podcast has changed the way I talk to people. It changed the way I look at life. I've talked to so many smart people. I mean, I've had 1,100, 1,200. Wow. 1,200 podcasts plus all the MMA ones. There's so many conversations. And through those conversations, I've gotten at least not a formal education, but an understanding of things that I never had before.
Across a lot of subjects too.
Yeah. Yeah. And through that, I think I've come to understand not just how I think about things, but why I've had roadblocks in conversations before and speed bumps, and I've learned. You know, I think if you examine yourself and your own thoughts, you're sure to learn. Hopefully.
Yeah. And I think it also can help, if you look at the other side, it can help you figure out why you believe what you believe too. Because you can look at them and say, okay, I still don't agree with you and this is why. But I think if people aren't even willing to look at the other side and consider why they might be wrong, how do you really know?
Yeah. And then you also run into some people that they don't really have opinions. They have these things that they've adopted.
Like slogans.
Yeah, they've gotten these things and they've decided this is what my side supports, so I'm gonna just spout this out, and this makes me seem like I'm a good team player. And then the thing about podcasts, though, when you're sitting down for 3 hours, you go, why do you think that? Like, what's going on there? And then they start talking about why they think that, and then it all falls apart. And then you realize that they don't even know why they think that.
Yeah.
And they probably never even thought about it before. They've just been saying what they've been saying for so long.
Right, because it sounds nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People love to do that. They love it. It's a sport. I mean, there's idea sports, and idea sports are arguments. Arguments are so oftentimes idea sports.
Yeah. Politics, too, to some degree, I think.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But the politics are just so flavored by money. The problem with that version of idea sport is lobbyists and special interest groups and different people that are pushing you to get into office because you're going to change laws and force things through. And that's the trickiest of all idea sports, and also the most shallow. I mean, just think about presidential debates and speeches, and those are the most shallow discussions in terms of the actual reality
content,
of and who that person is.
Yeah.
Who is that person? Imagine if you were dating someone and every time you went on a date with them, it was like a presidential speech. You'd be like, who the fuck are you? I don't even know who you are. You don't display any humanity.
I bet that would be kind of interesting, though.
Yeah,
you could probably write a book about that.
But that's what we want in leaders, right? We want someone who's full of shit who like makes us feel better. Like they're
comforting.
Yeah, that they're speaking like a leader. It's weird. It's weird that we like these patterns. It's the presidential speaking pattern is a very, very strange one.
Yeah, it's soothing
though. Groups, yeah, like, I guess in a way, right? Yeah, in a way it's soothing because we want a big daddy. We want a big daddy to take care of us.
Tell us everything will be okay.
But as you get older, that makes less and less sense. Like, I'm 50, and so if a new president was 45, I'd be like, that bitch don't know shit. What the fuck does he know? He only been living 45 years? Shit. But like when you're 30 and the president's 70, you're like, well, he makes sense.
Yeah.
He's an established person. He's a man of reason.
But is it the age difference or is it your own maturity?
Well, there's a lot of old dummies, for sure. There's a lot of dummies who just survived because we nerfed up the world for them. Yeah, it's your own maturity. It's also the amount of time that you have to examine ideas. See, if I worked in a coal mine, I probably would not have the time to sit around all day and think shit through. There's a great luxury that you have when you do this for a living.
Yeah.
That you get a chance to communicate with people over and over and over again. And there'll be another podcast tomorrow. There's another podcast the next day. Every day I'm looking at a new person and talking to a new brain and trying to see how it goes on in there. What's behind the eyes.
Figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that why you like it, this length?
You know what? Everybody told me not to do this. This was the fun. Like Ari Shaffir famously told me, you got to edit your podcast. I go, why? No one's going to listen to it for that long. So they don't listen. I don't give a fuck. I'm like, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
He's like, you should edit it. I'm like, why? Well, there's parts in it that are not good. I go, yeah, those parts you're going to have to either skip over or just not download it. I don't give a shit.
The nice thing about long form, though, too, if people know it's not edited, they trust it a bit more.
Yes. Yeah, there's definitely that. Yeah, like the like that. The yeah, all that that's in there.
It's character.
That's who you are.
Yeah.
That's who you are. You know, there's no way you could free ball an entire 3 hours. And well, Sam Harris can do it. He's pretty good at it.
Yeah.
Super articulate guy.
With practice. Well, you've been doing this a
Yeah.
long time. You're good.
Well, thank you. You're good at it too.
Thank you.
We just did 3 hours.
Whoa.
Is there anything you would like to say, or is there anything you don't think we covered?
I guess the only thing I'd say, we just launched our first season of Wrongspeak. The second season will be starting in the fall.
Now, how are you doing when you're saying seasons?
So we did 3 for the first, and we're going to do another cluster of 3 or 4 for the next.
But why are you calling them a season?
Because it's one group.
And one
Of
group about
episodes.
particular subjects?
No, so next season we're going to do one on political correctness and comedy. There's going to be one on academic mobbing, and then there's going to be another one that's going to be a surprise.
Oh, so you plan them out way in advance.
Yeah. We do a bit more of it's kind of more of a structure, like a story. It's not a long form thing. It's a bit more of more production in there.
I've mostly heard you do other people's stuff.
Yeah, probably.
So you're doing a lot of. How did you?
I do a lot.
Well, I'm not even sure how I found out about you. I mean, I'm sure I found out about you online, but I
Yeah.
don't know like what it was that led me to one of your
It
interviews.
was probably the Google memo, I think, when I wrote that column defending James Damore's memo, because I think that's when we first started being in contact. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do a lot of stuff. I have a weekly column for Playboy.com, monthly column for the Globe and Mail, which is Canada's national newspaper, co-host on Wrongspeak, the podcast, and I'll be doing hopefully lots and lots more stuff going forward.
And hopefully we'll do this again.
I hope so. This has been so much fun. I'm gonna totally fangirl now and tell you I've been watching you as an MMA color commentator forever. So this has been so cool.
Well, I thought it was really cool too. I really enjoyed talking to you. Tell people how they can find your social media and all that jazz.
I'm at Dr. Debra Soh on Twitter and Facebook, Dr. Debra W. Soh on Instagram, and then you can check out Wrongspeak at Wrongspeak. And all major podcasting platforms, iTunes, Play.
We did it, Deborah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody.